How does Santa go down? How does Santa do it?
Well, hello. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Yasmin Aliyah Khan with you guys. Check out Yasmin on Rebel HQ on YouTube as well. So guys, every day these days seems historic and amazing and also confounding oftentimes. So Epstein Files have been released, kind of. They've halfway, not even halfway, about best guess a third of the way released. Is there going to be legal consequences to Pam Bondi because of that? We're gonna get into that in a little bit. And why are national security officials now redacting the files? That's a super important and relevant question. And then later in the program, oh my God, Epstein's connections to intelligence agencies are now totally indisputable. Wait till you see what he was in the middle of, okay? So there's so much to cover on this show on so many topics, but let's get started right away. Yas, what do you got?
All right away. So we have an update to a story. So Reddit is picking up some slack where some trails may have gone cold. A user on Reddit made a post recently providing information that actually helped law enforcement identify the suspect in the Brown University shooting and in the murder of an MIT professor. So the suspect is Claudio Manuel Neves Valente. He was 48 years old, a Brown University alumnus, and he entered the country from Portugal on a student visa in the year 2000. He's suspected of killing 2 students and wounding 9 others at Brown University and also killing an MIT professor. He was found dead Thursday from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, the green card lottery program that allowed him into this country over 20 years ago has been suspended. So Cenk, kind of a 2-part story here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's what caused the shooting, which is still a bit of a mystery, but we're gonna get into here since we know who did the shooting. And then there's the absurd political reaction. What do you think is more likely to have caused the shooting? Guns who actually shot and were used to shoot and kill people here, and is the connective tissue in every single mass shooting like this, or green card visas? Or green card holders, come on. But here we go, there's an anti-immigrant wave, and I'll talk about why they're doing that anti-immigrant wave in a second as well.
Yep, those are all great questions, and we're gonna get to all of those. So 3 days after the shooting, law enforcement was directed to this Reddit post, and it said, "I'm being dead serious. The police need to look into a gray Nissan with Florida plates, possibly a rental," and that's from a Reddit user, according to an affidavit filed by the police in Providence, Rhode Island. The user later told law enforcement about an encounter he had with a suspicious man on the Brown campus. So the tipster, whom the police referred to only as John, said that he encountered the suspect inside a bathroom on the ground floor of the building between 1:45 p.m. and 2 p.m., around 2 hours before the first shots were reported. John said that the suspect's clothing was inappropriate for the weather and that they had made eye contact. John told the police that he followed the man after he left the building to a Nissan with a Florida license plate. But instead of entering the vehicle, the suspect started walking around the block with John behind him. John said it was like a game of cat and mouse. And at one point, the 2 men spoke. According to the affidavit, John asked the suspect, "Your car is back there. Why are you circling the block?" To which the suspect responded, "Why are you harassing me?" John went his own way soon after. So once law enforcement spoke with John, he was able to identify the suspect's vehicle from security camera footage. The vehicle had already been described as suspicious from a Brown faculty member, and it was later found that it was rented from downtown Boston. From there, they were able to find out who rented the vehicle, and that led them to the suspect. His motive for the shooting is currently unknown, but as we teased earlier, there is a second part to this story, because as if the story of a shooting isn't devastating and newsworthy enough, The other angle of this is not that of gun control like it usually is, but instead, this case is being used to opportunistically block other students from entering the country. So Neves Valente came to the US in 2000 as a student. He enrolled in Brown and was pursuing a PhD in physics, but he dropped out of the program between 2001 and 2003. In 2017, though, he returned to the US when he was issued a diversity immigrant visa, and months later, he became a legal permanent resident. Naturally, our president and his administration are using this incident as justification for getting rid of the green card lottery program altogether, because that makes sense. So Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said in a post on the social platform X that at Trump's direction, she is ordering the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services to pause the program. She said this heinous individual should never have been allowed in our country, she said of the suspect, Portuguese national Claudio Neves Valente. So the visa program that's just been suspended makes up to 50,000 green cards available each year to people outside of the United States, usually to countries that have low representation already in this country. However, since the lottery program was created by Congress, Trump's authority to pause the program is questionable. So just last month, when we had an Afghan man attack the National Guard members, Trump decided to punish all Afghan people. He decided an indefinite suspension of processing for applications from all Afghan nationals. He's back on his travel bans with bans or restrictions on travel to the US from now over 35 countries. But not only that, they're retroactively looking into people from those countries who came here during the Biden administration. Most of those countries that are restricted or banned from travel to the US are from Africa, but there's also a lot from the Middle East and from the Caribbean. He's also mad that the Biden administration let in so many Afghans who were fleeing the Taliban, and he claimed that Biden never vetted them, and so they're going to be looking into all of that again. So Cenk, as you kind of teased earlier, a few things come to mind on this. The travel bans, for one, he caught a lot of flack for those during his first term, but they're back with a vengeance. Also, the idea that one non-white person is representative of their entire race or country and all of their people who look remotely like them, that's ridiculous. And then there's the fact that this particular shooter was from Portugal. And I feel like Trump can't demonize the Portuguese people because they're European, they're like white enough. So he uses this instead as an excuse to just eliminate the lottery program, which he's never liked. But also, as you mentioned, there's no talk of gun violence anywhere with this. So we're just demonizing the individual shooters along with all of their people and not even talking about gun control anymore. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I knew our real problem was Portugal and immigrants from there. Yeah, okay, so look, this looks to be a shooter that did it for personal reasons. Why? Because he knew the first professor that he killed at MIT. So we don't yet know he didn't leave behind a manifesto as far as we know, etc. So we can't say it definitively, but he doesn't look like he had any political reason as far as we can tell, or the authorities can tell right now. And so these shootings happen, unfortunately, more than once a day in America. And so this one was particularly horrible given the number of people that were killed and the school shooting aspect of it, etc. For me, it was much worse than any of the others because one of my best friend's kids was stuck in that building that the shooting happened in. And I would have hated it no matter who did the shooting and for what reason they did the shooting, because loved ones were in danger, and I would hope that we would feel that way about everybody's kids. So now, do I think that my friend's son would have been better protected if we had blocked green card holders? Come on, guys. Come on. That's insanity. That doesn't make any sense. There's no logical nexus there. Oh, if we just blocked the people from Portugal or even Palestine. And I say even Palestine because unfortunately, mainstream media in America has done so much propaganda against Muslims that we're trained to believe, well, if they're from a Muslim country, well, that makes sense to block. I mean, probably terrorists or something, right? And so, whereas you go Portugal and you go, well, I mean, Portugal, that's Europe. No reason to block them. I mean, look at the stereotypes that are buried in our heads, right? So that's not the issue here. If you said hey, let's do better vetting because sometimes people have slipped through when they had violent tendencies or, you know, or in favor of political violence for whatever reason, right? Well, nobody's going to disagree with that. Nobody. We don't want any shootings here. We don't want any crazy people that are coming here. But we're going to block all immigration because of a mass shooting. But we have literally more than 400 of them per year. How about the 399 other mass shootings? Nah, it's nonsense. So obviously they're using it as an excuse to go after immigrants. So why are they going after immigrants? Look, part of it is a real political issue. The whole country didn't want the border to be as open as it was. And then the whole country didn't want the criminals who were undocumented here and committed serious crimes. We wanted to send them back. And then a portion of the country, which is Trump's base, wanted more deportations. Okay, so that's all legitimate political discussions, debates. I would argue there's some identity politics and culture war stuff there, but okay, that's a fine debate. But now when we're getting to green card holders, those are that is the legal way to come to this country. You can't follow the law any better than getting a green card, going through the process, etc. Now it's become a distraction. Hey, we haven't done anything for you guys. Your drug prices are high, housing's probably high, groceries are high, your wages are low. We're not gonna do anything for you. We're not gonna do anything. But don't worry, we've got somebody beneath you and you should help us pound them, right? Oh, the immigrants are causing your problem. Really, the immigrants rigged the system so you're perpetually screwed by corporate rule? The immigrants had nothing to do with that. Certainly not the legal immigrants. Is every legal immigrant that's gonna come into this country going to be an angel and like no one out of that mass of humanity is ever gonna commit a crime? No, but especially people who do it the legal way, they commit a quarter of the crime. Or another way of putting it is, people born in America, American citizens born here commit 4 times the crime of legal immigrants. So if you were looking to stop crime or violent crime, you would not target legal immigrants, you would target natural born Americans. But that wouldn't make sense either, because you should be targeting people who have that there's evidence against, whether they've committed the crime already or people are concerned they're gonna commit a crime. And by the way, if they are concerned, that's why we should have red flag laws and why we should have universal background checks. So we don't want the wrong guys, no matter what nationality they are, to get the guns. And we want good guys that come in and contribute to our society. I mean, we've given you a million examples, but some of the most successful people in the country are legal immigrants, slamming the door in their face because of a random shooting at Brown that had nothing to do with any of this. Is just more politics meant to distract you from the people that are causing the real problems in this country, which is the donor class who have all the power and who have rigged all the rules for their own benefit and not ours.
Yeah. And authoritarianism requires some kind of enemy, someone to fear, some kind of target. And it doesn't matter. All of this is making it very clear that it doesn't matter who that is, because all of it is propaganda anyway, right? They're just making things up anyway. So they can make up things about one group, they can make up things about another group. The Somalis right now, they're not destroying this country. That is preposterous. And it sounds preposterous to anyone who isn't already wildly racist and or ignorant, although I think you have to be very ignorant to be racist in the first place. But since it doesn't matter who the target demo is, those demos can and do change all the time. I thought the Haitians were the enemy. I thought they were the ones who were destroying this country, but now I guess it's the Somalians. I can't keep up. And I guess they assume that most other people can't keep up either. It doesn't matter as long as they look different, they look other, they look like not the people that you see regularly on your television or in your government or even around your own neighborhood, because people tend to live in isolated communities these days. And this is so obvious. This is making it abundantly clear that for all the rhetoric that we heard during the election, during the campaign, when they were saying, oh no, we have no problem with migrants and immigrants, we have only problems with illegal immigrants. We don't like the way that they're coming in, crossing the border illegally, blah, 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 blah. And now they're getting rid of the green card program, the green card lottery. A lot of people enter this country legally through some type of green card lottery, including my own family. And it's so ridiculous because this is the legal avenue. This is one of the legal avenues. And if you are fighting against this, then it was never about illegal immigration. And they're not even trying to perpetuate that talking point anymore because this is so clearly, they can't do it. So
yeah. So last couple of things is, look, if you got an issue with the green card lottery, no problem. That's a good political debate. Connecting it to this shooting is ludicrous. And are we all supposed to be afraid of the Portuguese now? And in the beginning, of course, the Israel First crowd said, oh, he's probably pro-Palestinian. Now it's not that at all. And they're like, whatever's good for the Portuguese is good for the Portugander. And we're just gonna go with the same exact talking point against immigrants, no matter who it is. Okay, well, at least know that it's a political trick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope, I have not that much hope, I guess, but I want people to see through these things. I want the people who support Trump to see through all these things. They haven't seen through it for the last 10 years, and I really wish they would. But at this point, Trump is like an old man who is falling asleep. He is an evil person. He's just saying crazy things. He goes and he yells at the entire country for 20 minutes right before Christmas. Fine. But who are all these people who continue to prop up this person who so clearly should not be in charge of anything, let alone the entire country and the global economy? Those people, I feel like, are at this point, it's like, what are you doing? So the people who are still supporting this, I have a lot of problems with now. But I'm trying to be compassionate. Some days are better than others.
Sure. God bless. Okay. So guys, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, Epstein Files. Dun, dun, dun. All right, guys, let's go to our members at tyt.com. By the way, actually, before I do that real quick, so we got our 20th anniversary coming up. That's December 22nd. Make sure you tune in for that special. It's fun. First ever YouTube partner channel. So it's gonna be kind of a momentous day. And Shop TYT has limited edition TDR hats and a 15% off discount if you use Gear Up. Use the promo code Gear Up and get 15% off. I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. And we're on Substack. Check us out there as well. We keep growing in that regard. Okay. Oh, and by the way, speaking of Shop TYT, I got my Gladiator / Rebel Alliance TYT logo shirt. I love this one. Although Michael claims it said also an M, and so it's like TYT and Michael's shirt combined. I don't know if that's really true, but in fact, I know it's not true because I thought of it. Okay, anyways, but I love that shirt. So check that out at shoptyt.com as well. All right, so Schleiven writes in at tyt.com, law enforcement officials are sifting through the information on the reward that was offered. Maybe, I don't know. Eclectic Mistletoe says, that's funny already. I'm really starting to think that the MO of politicians after one of these shootings is, quick, let's find some angle to focus on before people start blaming our extremely loose gun laws. There's a confluence of different factors and issues, and yes, that's of course also one of them for sure. My favorite one was when after the shooting, the horrific school shooting in Texas, Ted Cruz was like, I got it, less doors. Idiot. Just Jim says, Cenk, you may think this is crazy, but naturalized citizens should be worried. No, I don't think it's crazy. No, no one would know it better than me. Stephen Miller's wife threatened to take away my citizenship because I'm a naturalized citizen. Guys, I want you to know something. I don't know that it matters anymore, but just so you understand, I saw it again the other day. That's why it's top of mind. We still have these like people who have a vendetta against us for inexplicable reasons on the left, okay? who are still lying about us. Like they say we're pro-ICE. It's insanity if you watch the show, insanity, right? And they keep lying and saying that I liked Trump in the beginning. You guys watch the show. It's crazy to say that. No, what I'm saying is not that Trump is not going to do terrible things. I was hopeful that the independents that voted for Trump, and maybe even a little bit of right wing, would then say, no, you're going too far. And what happened? That's exactly what happened. It's not that they weren't going to try these things. It's that the country was going to stand up, and after a battle, our side was going to win, and he wasn't going to be able to do those things in the long run. So here we are in the middle of the battle. And when we got to mass deportations, Rogan, Theo Von Dillon, et cetera, we're like, no, wrong, right? And so even some of the right wing started to say wrong. So exactly as we predicted. So now it doesn't mean they're not going to come for me. And so I know I'm on the front lines in that regard. But I think that if they come for me, that a lot of folks will rally. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, okay? But I believe in America, certainly not Trump. All right, back on TYT, Jake and Yaz with you guys. Check out Yaz's podcast too, Modern Context. And so, guys, Noble Mobile, this is a Christmas gift to yourself. Everybody who's done it is writing in. Not everybody who did it is writing in, but people who have written in all say that when they switched, I was right. There's no change at all. Phone number, contacts. Takes about 10 minutes of your life. It's people get so nervous about switching over, and I don't blame you. I was nervous too. Like we all have that thought in the back of our heads. But I'm telling you, I went through it. It didn't change a single thing. It took less than 10 minutes. Now I save a ton of money. If you're paying over $50, it's nuts. There's no reason to do that. tyt.com/switch. So for your cell phone service, and last month I only paid $39 because I got cash back. They're giving you cash back too. It's crazy. tyt.com/switch. tyt.com/switch. Okay, Yaz, what's next?
We got another story. Let's roll the tape.
Today marks the deadline for the DOJ to make the Epstein Files public.
We're going to release several 100,000 documents today. I expect that we're going to release more documents over the next couple of weeks. So today, several 100,000, and then over the next couple of weeks, I expect several 100,000 more. There's a lot of eyes looking at these, and we want to make sure that when we do produce the materials we're producing, that we're protecting every single victim.
Yeah, nonsense and illegal. They have to release all of the files today. If they don't, they could be in some legal trouble. In fact, we had Representative Ro Khanna on the show yesterday, and he outlined a scenario where Pam Bondi might be arrested if they don't release all the files. But wait till you see who's combing through the files at the end here. Maybe gives away the game as to what was actually happening with Epstein. So Yaz has the details now.
All right, so a month ago, President Donald Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law, and that started a 30-day timer for Attorney General Pam Bondi to release all the documents related to Epstein. But as you just saw, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, he has stated that the administration is going to roll out the documents over time rather than just release them all at once. That is not what they're supposed to be doing. So we received only some of the files today, and we will talk about what is in them in just a moment. First, let's watch Representative Ro Khanna explain what consequences Pam Bondi could face for concealing those Epstein files.
So when we talk about prosecution, we're not talking about tomorrow because the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. So it's Pam Bondi's not going to arrest herself as the Attorney General. Would consequences begin if the Democrats take the House in 2026?
Well, they could begin before that. I mean, Massey and I have talked about introducing an impeachment resolution against Pam Bondi, where we could get Republicans breaking and supporting that if the release of the files is not in compliance with the law. You already have Susie Wiles throwing her under the bus, the White House chief of staff, saying she whiffed. So she is losing support among the Republican caucus. Second, she could be held in inherent contempt of Congress. That means the Sergeant of Arms of Congress could actually arrest her, and there could be a trial in Congress about whether she was transparent. And we are pursuing a number of those things.
All right, so the Epstein Files Transparency Act, it does allow for some redaction. So the Epstein Files Act says the Justice Department may withhold or redact the identities of Epstein's victims and contains exemptions that would allow the DOJ to withhold records that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. So here is Representative Thomas Massie explaining how we'll be able to tell whether we're getting the real files or an over-redacted cop-out.
One of the ways we'll know is there are people who have covered this case for years, and I've talked to them in private, and they know what some of the material is that's back there. But the other way that we're going to know is the victims' lawyers have been in contact with me. And collectively, they know there are at least 20 names of men who are accused of sex crimes in the possession of the FBI. These would reside in the FD 302 forms. So if we get a large production on December 19th, and it does not contain a single name of any male who's accused of a sex crime or sex trafficking or rape or any of these things, then we know they haven't produced all the documents. It's that simple.
All right, well, what happens now? Well, under the law, the DOJ has 15 days to turn over its rationale for any documents that it has decided to withhold. We should also mention who is doing the redacting and why, because that is interesting. The Justice Department's National Security Division inherited the redaction work from the FBI. It's surprising to many national security law specialists that that's who's doing the work, given the division's historical emphasis on classified matters and the lack of a nexus between Epstein and national security interests. So, Cenk, there's more to this story, and we will get into what has a little bit of what's been released of the files. Does that suggest that Epstein was connected to intelligence? And this also speaks to a story that we're going to discuss a little bit later.
Yeah, 100%. So there's already so many connections to intelligence, and as Yaz alluded to there, check out our video on the latest, where apparently Jeffrey Epstein was in the middle of the Iran-Contra scandal. He was apparently one of the most powerful men on earth without any of us ever knowing about it. But there is no regular citizen in the middle of an Iran-Contra scandal and helping to ship arms back and forth. After reading that story, it becomes 100% clear that he's intelligence. Is it CIA or Mossad? Those are your only two choices. Again, the Israelis brokered the Iran-Contra deal. Of course they did, okay? But he might be CIA. And that might be why our government has been protecting him all along. And now, what is the other piece of evidence that is now confirming it on the same day? Well, our own government telling us, yeah, national security is now redacting things. Why does national security have to redact information about a sex crime in New York and in Florida? That should have nothing to do with national security unless there was intelligence involved. But hold, we gave you one quote already from CNN. Let me give you a different quote. Counterintelligence specialists were asked to drop nearly all of their other work to process the Epstein documents, two people said. And then there's a fascinating little twist, but some lawyers declined to participate. So number one, counterintelligence and national security is redacting materials from Epstein files, period. Intelligence, no question, over, okay? Number two, apparently it's so supernova toxic that some lawyers in the government are refusing to participate in the redactions. That's also interesting. So meanwhile, New York Times, we'll get into this more later, is still saying the idea that he might be connected with intelligence is conspiracy theories. Well, the government's saying it. They're saying we gotta do counterintelligence on this material. The national security interests are at play. Why? Obviously, he's involved in state affairs, whether it's American or Israeli intelligence. And that's not the weird part, guys. When you're running a giant potential blackmail operation on the most powerful people on earth, it's not that surprising that an intelligence agency would be involved. What's surprising is all of the national media in unison covering it up. But finally, CNN here, and I'm kind of amused by it, because as the government is telling them, this is counterintelligence, we are the ones that are redacting these files. CNN says at the end of the article, it is awfully strange, doesn't normally happen. Well, okay, we got a slight admission there. Yes, it is awfully strange.
Yeah, the media is, the way that they're choosing to cover this is very interesting. And I feel like that in and of itself is its own story that we could probably talk a lot about on this show. But we are going to continue talking about these files and see what has been released. It's not great, like they've been working on this since Trump was on the campaign trail, allegedly. So he, sorry, I think my mic went out a little bit. Well.
We can hear you.
You can hear me, right?
It's just
okay.
A little.
It just is. All right, I'll fix it at the next break. But basically, the Department of Justice unveiled a huge trove of these Epstein files. Reporters are still going through what's inside. So far, we've seen some notable images of Michael Jackson and Bill Clinton. So here is Epstein with Michael Jackson. Take a look at that. That's.
Oh God, that's such a haunting picture in two different ways.
Yeah, it's creepy. And then there's also this one of Bill Clinton in a hot tub next to someone whose face has been redacted. And then there is Bill Clinton again. Here's Michael Jackson, Bill Clinton, and Diana Ross. I was just listening to Diana Ross yesterday in my car. And we've also obtained this little bit of information. Masseuses reads the top of the document released in the Epstein drop, followed by 254 spots that are all blacked out. The document notes redacted to protect potential victim information. And then we also have Ro Khanna calling out the initial rollout disappointing. And he wants the DOJ to explain the exact timeline for when the rest of the files will be released and the full explanations for what has been redacted and why. And also Chuck Schumer has put out a statement and he said, simply releasing a mountain of blacked out images violates the spirit of transparency and the letter of the law. For example, all 119 pages of one document were completely blacked out. We need answers as to why. Cenk, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, they already told us it's counterintelligence and national security, and they're blocking everything out, which leads me to believe that they're definitely guilty. So now there's two different sets of folks who are guilty of different things. One is, as both Tom Massey and Ro Khanna are pointing out, no, the law was very clear. You have to give us all the documents now, and you can't over redact either. You're supposed to redact to protect the victims, not redact to protect national intelligence agencies or maybe non-national intelligence agencies. And so it seemed to be in violation of the law. In fact, Ro Khanna last night on the show, right here on the Young Turks, said that the consequences are as significant as the sergeant at arms arresting the attorney general for not following the law. That would be amazing. Now, it's very unlikely to come to that, but the point there is both on the Republican and Democratic side, these bills passed nearly unanimously. They were signed into law. They're crystal clear. And there are at least a couple of honest Congress people, the ones who started all of this, who are saying, we're not gonna mess around with you guys. We're gonna enforce the law. No one's above it. And Jeffrey Epstein and his associates and his allies have been above the law for a long, long time. And the time has come to put an end to that.
Yeah, I feel like what is the point of all of this? So they're violating the law, but they're at the top of the law. So like, who is going to hold them accountable? What is going to happen? These pictures that have come out is nothing new, really. They're hard to look at. I don't like looking at them. The pictures of Michael Jackson, we already knew that he had some associations with Epstein. We obviously knew that Bill Clinton, something was there. even though Susie Wiles actually said in her piece with Vanity Fair that he was less complicit than Donald Trump would like all of us to believe he was with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't really believe that though. She also said that Trump was less complicit than people believe. But yeah, this is such a nothing burger. They redacted, what was it, 119 pages that were blacked out completely. What is the point of that? And again, this is something that Trump was talking about since he was on the campaign trail, right? And then he got into office since January. What have they been doing for this last year? If they were like, they were gonna release the files or was gonna release the files or working on the files, then he signs a thing and he says 31 days, we're gonna release the files. And here we have this, and it's just nothing. And then they decided themselves that we're just going to like slow drip this out. We're just gonna release it periodically in batches and like they're trying to contain the story and it's not going to go away. And this is just really disappointing. And I mean, like, I would love to see some consequences for all of this, but it does feel like a stretch, Cenk.
Yeah, we're doing I don't know if there's anything fun about this story, but a fun little poll about what you're most surprised by. It's not about national intelligence or anything serious. Who are you most surprised to see having met with Epstein? A, David Brooks, B, Deepak Chopra, C, Bill Gates, D, Noam Chomsky.
I was going to say Chomsky.
I think Chomsky wins on that one. What in the world was Noam Chomsky doing with Jeffrey Epstein? So by the way, I don't mean that in any negative way. Tons of people he met had nothing to do with the illegal activities. Why? As we've been telling you over the last couple of months, and especially because of the brilliant reporting from Dropsite News, it is absolutely clear that Jeffrey Epstein was one of the most powerful men on earth. He could organize a meeting with almost any world leader at the drop of a hat. He could get you inside the White House anytime he wanted. And apparently he was the nexus in the Iran-Contra deal. So for decade after decade, Jeffrey Epstein and his friends have been running things behind the scenes. And at this very late date, the American government is still trying with all of its will to try to block you from finding out what he did, what his friends did, and who he's connected to. And obviously one of the possibilities is that he's connected to us, the CIA, and that's why they've let him slide all these years, and that's why they never release or prosecute any of the other criminals.
Yeah, those polling results are exactly what I'm feeling. Because before you even mentioned his name when you were reading off the poll results, I was thinking it's Noam Chomsky. But you're absolutely right. A lot of people are going to be mentioned in these files, and we're going to get more and more names out. It doesn't necessarily mean that that all of these people were complicit. A lot of them were, though. And like all of that is, hopefully. The hope was that we would have known by now kind of more information around all these things. But the fact is that we don't. So we're still kind of in the exact same position that we were yesterday. Not a whole lot has changed, at least not for me. But I guess we'll see how this plays out.
It's the last thing. Every once in a while, as somebody threatens to use a sergeant at arms, that's the law enforcement officer for the House of Representatives, to arrest someone in the executive branch or the judicial branch. It's always fun speculation. It's never happened. It's very likely never going to happen. But man, would that be a moment if the sergeant at arms arrests the attorney general or the deputy attorney general for not following the law? Well, then we'd know that we had at least some people in our Congress and our government that represents us. But that is a very small chance. So my guess is they will continue to redact the living crap out of this. They'll continue to hide this information until we elect one honest president. Wouldn't that be amazing if we had one honest president in our lifetime? And if you say, oh, Jake, that's not fair. We're on the left, or a lot of us are on the left, and we had Barack Obama. Obama didn't release any Epstein files either, and it also happened under his watch. So it's so obvious, this intelligence. It's the most obvious thing in the world. All right. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, if it wasn't obvious enough for you, I mean, we got the postmortem on the Democrats, but a little bit later after that, Dropsite News does it again. They drop the facts, the reporting, the mic. They drop everything on our government's head and the rest of the media, because it's the. I mean, how could he be in the middle of Iran-Contra? How, right? So we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, back on TYT. So let's go to our members at TYT.com. Hedgehog Dragon says, I'm going to say it again, Ro Khanna 2028. Look, guys, I'm not biased in favor of Ro. We've had verbal fisticuffs before. We've had massive disagreements before. But right now, I don't see anyone else within a country mile of Ro Khanna. Does anybody see another Democrat that's fighting like 10, 20% of like Ro Khanna is for all of us? So yeah, at this point, it's a no-brainer. Let's see how things develop. Boomer Dragon Cat says, I've kind of had it with the files. Show me the smoking guns or shut up. This drip just isn't doing it for me. Yeah, no, Cat, what it is not like we're already have converted, right? We have to get past traditional media constantly brainwashing a huge percentage of the population. Nothing to see here. It's about Trump. It's about Bill Gates. It's about individuals. Don't look at the government. Don't look at the government. Whatever you do, please don't look at the government. So we have to keep talking about it and how the government is covering it up, etc. So slowly the whole country wakes up to, oh, he was involved with the government, which leads to the next comment. Asimov's Prophet says, so now we have to admit to ourselves that our own intelligence agency may have been using American children as honeypots. People need to go to jail. And I couldn't agree more with that. Even if it's Mossad guys, there's no way the CIA didn't know it. I mean, if the CIA didn't know it and it was Mossad, then the CIA is useless and should immediately be disbanded, okay? So the CIA is super likely to be involved. So yeah, if they're involved, you're right. That's our government saying rape American children. So we could do what? I don't know. But that's why they're covering this up so furiously. It doesn't have to do with protecting random rich and powerful people. It has to do with protecting people who betrayed us inside this government. Panic on Funkatron says, New York Times says the top writer who was involved with Epstein can't trust New York Times reporting on this. Look, they've had some good reports and some bad reports on it, but of course, whenever it gets to Israel or CIA, they're like, no, right? And so why does the New York Times do that? Because yeah, you can't trust them. They had a reporter who's actively working with Epstein. So what the hell was that? Did the New York Times do an internal investigation and find out if that guy was intelligence, or if that guy was working for a different country? He was inside your house, New York Times. Nothing, anything. Happy to hear it. PB Cupcake says, oh, TYT is almost old enough to drink. Actually, technically, we're 23. We started the online show 20 years ago. We had the radio show for 3 years before that. Teddy Lucy Linda says, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if 47 was behind this shooting, referring to the Brown shooting, because he'll stop at nothing to distract from the Epstein files. I'm sure he has no problem with ridding the country of another immigrant. I know this sounds conspiratorial. Yeah, it's too conspiratorial. No way that happened. Risk reward doesn't make any sense. So that's my 2 cents. Back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys, and CDN Norse Dog Dad. Thank you for gifting another membership on YouTube, American Hero. We appreciate you, and I appreciate Disrupt Daily. I'm allowed to appreciate this. They wrote it in the YouTube member section. Cenk is my favorite. Okay, all right. We at least got one. All right, guys. Yeah, as you got more stories.
All right, we are going to keep this Epstein train rolling. That might not have been the best analogy. The New York Times, though, has stated that Jeffrey Epstein did not grow his power and wealth via ties to intelligence. Jank, just that's all you get. What's your 2 cents?
Yeah, no, guys, this is an enormous story. So, as Drop Site News put it, Jeffrey Epstein appears to be the Forrest Gump of all political scandals and intelligence agency maneuvers. But I'm sure it's all a giant coincidence. It's not. If you watch this story, you'll see Epstein definitely involved with intelligence. Which intelligence? You're going to find that out too.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to deny after all of this. So on Tuesday, the New York Times published a massive piece on Jeffrey Epstein. And in it, it argues abundant conspiracy theories hold that Epstein worked for spy services or ran a lucrative blackmail operation. But we found a more prosaic explanation for how he built a fortune. But thanks to new reporting from Drop Site News, we've learned about Epstein's actual connections to an American intelligence scandal, the Iran-Contra affair. So specifically, Epstein, he shared a penthouse with an Iran-Contra lawyer, and he worked for an Iran-Contra arms dealer, and he moved the Iran-Contra planes to Ohio for use by billionaire retail mogul Leslie Wexner. So this piece is incredibly detailed. It is so long and we don't have time to go through all of it, but if you are so interested, I would really encourage a lot of you to go find the article and read it for yourselves. It is hefty. But for now, here are some of the major takeaways that we'll give you. We'll start with a man named Stanley Pottinger. In the early 1980s, under the CIA supervision, Pottinger advised an Iranian banker on shipping embargoed arms to Iran using fraudulent paperwork and overseas dummy companies in the very same period that Pottinger and Epstein worked together selling tax avoidance strategies from a penthouse by Central Park. So the CIA would later use the profits from that scheme to bankroll the Contras down in Nicaragua. And on one occasion, the CIA met with that Iranian banker in Pottinger's office. And again, this is all during the time that Pottinger and Epstein were renting a penthouse together. So that Iranian banker was later indicted, but a money launderer and weapons trafficker named Adnan Khashoggi became America's next conduit to Iran. In 1985, Khashoggi teamed up with the CIA and then Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres, who helped Israel sell its own weapons to Iran while the US promised to refill those weapon stores. At this time, future Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak was head of Israel's military intelligence directorate. So it says former Israeli intelligence officer Ari Ben-Menash wrote in his 1992 memoir that Ehud Barak feared Peres or the Americans would discover the slush fund bank accounts where the arms profits were hidden and take the money for themselves. Ben-Menash claimed that Barak arranged for media mogul Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, to launder the Iran weapons profits through his company's accounts. Epstein often made vague boasts about being a financial bounty hunter who tracked down hidden money. Well, in 1987, while Robert Maxwell was allegedly hiding money from arms deals, Epstein bragged to a journalist about finding money for Adnan Khashoggi in such detail, the journalist thought Epstein might be in the business of hiding as well as finding it. So as the 80s went on, the Iran-Contra scheme fell apart, it blew up in the press, and as the years passed, Epstein was handed control of billionaire fashion mogul Leslie Wexner's finances. So eventually, Wexner's empire gobbled up Southern Air Transport, or SAT, which controlled the very same planes that the CIA used to send weapons to Iran. So with Epstein acting as Wexner's logistics man in Ohio, in 1996, SAT finished relocating its world headquarters to Columbus to deliver products from factories in Hong Kong and southern China directly to Wexner's network of limited brand stores. And on October 1st, 1998, SAT abruptly filed for bankruptcy exactly 1 week before the CIA Inspector General released its official findings on Contra cocaine trafficking allegations. Oh my God, that was so hefty. That's so much. And it really doesn't even scratch the surface of everything that was detailed in that article. Again, you should read both. Read the New York Times piece and then read what DropSite revealed, all within this 1 week. I think I looked at it, Cenk, in the New York Times piece, they only mention Israel 3 times. And it's just like, oh, Epstein was in Israel visiting these people and they weren't impressed with him. So it's really crazy. And the New York Times piece, the way that they try to frame it is that, oh, there's all these conspiracy theories around Epstein and like, does he work for Mossad? Like, was he a Mossad agent? Was he working with the CIA? All these things are very conspiratorial, according to the New York Times, which actually a viewer just pointed out, they might have some, it's really not saying much to say, but they might have some compromise, there might be compromise a little bit there. But with the New York Times piece, it was very much they were attempting to take a pragmatic approach. Like, you know what? It doesn't have to be so conspiratorial. Oftentimes, the simpler explanation is the right one. It has nothing to do with intelligence. This is all about, he was just really good at networking. But who was he networking with? And why was he involved? He said he was like Forrest Gump. He really does just pop up everywhere. And the idea that he's popping up now in relation to Iran-Contra is unbelievable. This is a big story.
Yeah, no. You only read the New York Times piece if you want to see how mainstream media covers up for the government, intelligence agencies, etc. Basically, it's a piece saying nothing to see here. Perfectly normal how he got all of his connections and money. Nonsense. DropSite News doing real journalism. Excuse me, guys. I'm still sick. Excuse me. 1 second. Excuse me, guys. So DropSite News doing real journalism shows you, no, this guy was in the middle of a deal between the CIA, Israeli intelligence, and the Iranians. There are no random Forrest Gump dudes who walk into the middle of an Iran-Contra deal between the CIA, the Israelis, and Iran. That's not a thing that happens. You'd have to be a borderline lunatic to think that that happens. He's arranging where the illegal planes go. Epstein is. He's arranging meetings between Israeli intelligence and US, etc. There's no question he's intelligence. None, zero. And so at this point, the New York Times and all the other media they see the DropSite News stories. Like if they could disprove them, do you know how badly they want to disprove them? Because DropSite News is humiliating them by being real journalists, while the New York Times is like, it's Trump, it's Bill Clinton, nothing to look at here. Don't look at Israel, don't look at the CIA. No, we're gonna look at him, because what the hell's he doing in the middle of that deal? Guys, it's even worse than that in a sense. You always had this sense of like, there are powerful people that you don't see. I ran this clip from President John F. Kennedy a couple of weeks before he was assassinated, talking about groups of secret people that conspire against the government, against all of us, etc. It's a haunting speech by JFK, assassinated a couple of weeks later. And so Adnan Khashoggi is the uncle of Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post columnist who was murdered by the Saudis. Okay, Hashemi is some guy who helped arrange the Iran part of the Iran-Contra controversy. He winds up being injected with something and dying of leukemia 2 days later. People keep popping up dead all over these stories, okay? So are there a group of people doing illicit deals like this? Well, of course there are. Iran-Contra, that was an illicit deal. We were not supposed to fund the Contras, And we certainly weren't supposed to sell weapons to a government we were calling terrorists at the time. Reagan was saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Meanwhile, CIA and Jeffrey Epstein and the Israelis are helping Iran get those weapons. And then, of course, many, many years later, Israel then turns around and says, can you believe Iran has weapons? We have to attack them. So the only thing I couldn't see definitively out of this story is Epstein Mossad or CIA or both? I don't know, but it's definitely one of them, if not both of them. So anyone claiming he's not intelligence, honestly, most of them probably have not read the drop site all stories. If you haven't and you just don't know, no problem, right? But if you read that and you still claim that Epstein wasn't involved in intelligence, you're lying. And then I have to wonder why you're lying, because that's a completely irrational and indefensible conclusion that you would come to after seeing Epstein in the middle of all of these deals. By the way, almost every single, I say almost because I'm not positive, but it's not almost in the ones that I've seen. Every single story that I've seen him do some sort of interacting with different countries, doing deals, setting up meetings, were all on behalf of Israel.
Mm-hmm. It's impressive how prolific he managed to be, from where he started to where he ended up to where he's organizing all kinds of meetings with world leaders, how he has targeted every celebrity, anyone literally of any kind of note and significance and relevance to any position of power, right? Whether that's in entertainment or business or in government, he was everywhere. And for the New York Times to publish that piece, and like they said it like it was this big bombshell reporting. They spent so much time and money on it. They had their best reporters on it. They dug through everything. And then that's what they ended up publishing. It's really kind of appalling. And then for Drop Site to come out immediately and be like, how'd you miss all this? Like obviously they were leaving out a lot of things in this bombshell piece that they wanted to deliver to the American people. It's really unbelievable. And all of this is happening the same week that we're supposed to get the Epstein Files. This feels much, much, much more significant, much bigger than anything that we got from our government, because all we got was a few pictures of Michael Jackson and Bill Clinton that I would have rather not seen,
Yeah,
if that's what they had to give us, I would have just said, no, thank you. That would have been better.
The last two things here. One, we'll put the link in the description box for the Drop Site news story so you can read it yourself. And two, one of our members just wrote in on tyt.com, put that away, wrote in, I predict Maxwell will be taking a ride on Adelson jet very soon. So why? Because Robert Maxwell is involved in these stories. Robert Maxwell is Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. And Robert Maxwell is the most legendary Mossad spy of all time. He's the one that stole our nuclear secrets. By the way, I mean, I'm never gonna stop saying this because I find it to be the most remarkable thing I've ever heard. He stole our nuclear secrets and we decided not to arrest him because it would be an international incident that would embarrass the Israelis. Yeah, if you steal our nuclear secrets, embarrass is the least you should be. So our government protecting Israel at every turn, in the most outrageous ways, whether they're doing a deal with us in Iran-Contra. Now that I get why they're protecting, CIA protects them because they were involved in that complicit plan, in that illicit plan. But by the way, that plan was illegal, and the people who did it at the CIA should have been arrested, let alone the Israelis and the Iranians. Okay. But also in deals in situations where it massively hurts us. I'm trying to prevent people from getting nukes is one of the most important things that we do, because the more countries that have nukes, the more unstable the world becomes, and the greater the danger for all of us. Israel steals that from us, and we're like, thank you, sir, may we have another. And we've given them over $300 billion for no reason at all. All they ever do is spy and steal. And it looks like either Mossad or CIA or both unleashed this plague of Jeffrey Epstein upon us. And they did it knowing that they were going to molest and rape underage American girls here for their intelligence benefit. No, our government doesn't represent us at all. We need somebody to represent us desperately to get our government back.
And just one quick thing before we break. Yeah, Trump just gave that insane address to the American people on Wednesday where he yelled at us for 20 minutes. It was very bizarre. But in that speech, he said, look at all these things that I've done for Israel. And he said, look, I had to write it down. I had to take notes on it because I've done so much for Israel. Read the room. No, the American people on both sides of the aisle wildly oppose American involvement in Israel. At this point, though, like, how do we even detangle ourselves from them? The US and Israel, we are the same. We are their arm. We are their muscle. They're the little guy. We're the big guy with the muscles. They're the, it's a whole thing. And Trump and the Republicans are still pushing this narrative that we need to support Israel and look at all these things. He's the America First president. The people voted for him because he was the America First president. And he said that, that's how he branded himself. And yet here he is doing the thing that even his own supporters would rather him not do. And then everything coming out now with the Epstein Files. Epstein is another issue that Trump voters feel very, very passionate about, or at least they did. I think they've kind of like mellowed out a little bit on that because of, just the way everything has been handled. But, these two issues coming together, the way that they're coming together is very strange. And it's really not being reported on very much or very widely, especially not in the mainstream media. And we can see that very clearly with the piece, the differences between the two pieces that have come out this week.
Yeah, I gotta say one last thing because a member on Twitch wrote in, Dev0094 said, yep, it's all a coincidence. Procuring cyber weapons for Israel, coincidence. Setting up meetings for a former Israeli prime minister with Putin, that's just a coincidence too. And we could list 10, 12 more coincidences. Guys, this is why I get so frustrated with the media. So the government is obviously somehow complicit in this. That's why they desperately covered it up under Republican and Democratic administrations. But the media has no excuse. Breaking a story about how the CIA was involved with Epstein as an example would be spectacular. It would be the biggest story that's ever happened. Breaking a story about how, if it was Mossad, same thing. But whenever it gets to Mossad or Israel, the press, unanimously, I don't mean independent press like Leverage, Dropsite News, Guardian, Us, etc. I mean traditional media are unified in not covering this angle. That is bizarre. It's the weirdest thing I have ever seen. So what is going inside these news organizations where they're like, oh, it's super obvious that Epstein was working with Israel somehow? Obviously. There's like a million connections. They're like, nope, won't cover it, won't cover it, won't cover it. Okay, well then you guys are useless. You're not journalists. In fact, your job is to cover up the news, not to reveal the news. If you're not covering this, the biggest story, one of the biggest stories of our lifetimes, and you're not connecting that dot, no, you guys are the worst. They're anti-news. Their job is to do marketing for the most corrupt people in our governments and to make sure the American people never find out the real news. Epstein was definitely connected to Israel. The prime minister is sitting at his place 30 different times. Israeli spies are coming in and out of his building. He's trying to get building his house. He's trying to get us to bomb Syria. He's trying to get America to bomb Iran. In the emails, he's constantly talking about what else can we do to help Israel? What else can we do to help Israel? I'm trying to help Israel. Israel. Oh, here's the Israeli spy. Here's the Israeli prime minister. And getting cyber weapons for Israel. How is this complicated? So, okay, I guess every national media reporter that works for these, now I'm gonna start calling corrupt traditional media, has decided to bury the most relevant part of this story on behalf of a foreign government. And how that works, I don't know. If you told me before, like that a memo was passed around and they get together and decide not to cover this, I would have said that's crazy. No way they do that. But they're all doing it at the same time. Now I'm wondering, like, are they literally in on it? And if you don't know the history of these traditional media outlets, have they worked with the CIA before? Yes, that is very well documented. New York Times, Time Magazine, all of these traditional media outlets, the CIA would often feed them propaganda before we would do coup against the government. It was part of the coup that these papers would smear anyone representing their own people so the CIA could get rid of them. Are they still having that role? I don't know, because the more they cover this up, and every day that the New York Times, Washington Post, ABC, CNN, all these guys cover up this story, is another day we begin to wonder, who the hell are they working for? And has our entire news operation in this country been all about propaganda to deceive you all your entire lives, to paint a picture that isn't real at all? So yeah, that's how far this goes, because there's no question that that now Epstein's part of intelligence, and almost every major media outlet is lying to you and covering that up.
Yeah, and at some point it has to be acceptable, even the right patriotic thing to do, to question your journalists, right? Now you have freedom of press, and they're clearly not reporting on a story the way they should be, and it's inexcusable at this point, right? There's so much evidence, and they're not even mentioning it, and so many people in this country are still watching, getting the majority of their news from those major cable stations. And so they really are just not hearing about a lot of the things that, we talk about on this show and other shows like ours are discussing. So I do like that we're talking about it, at least. I like that our audience is informed. I like that they're engaged in all of this, and I just wish we could expand that a little bit, or tell your friends, like ask them, like, have you heard about this? It's so bizarre to me how all these things are still happening, and people who think that they're informed with the news are so ill-informed, or they're just missing entire pieces of the narrative. And I don't think that they want to be ill-informed. I think the people who are actively watching these shows want to know about what's actually going on, and they don't realize that they're just not getting the whole story. So this is a moment for journalism.
All right, everybody check out Yaz on Rebel HQ, and we're gonna come right back. We've got so much more news for you guys. Very full day of news. And by the way, exciting announcement at the top of the 8 o'clock hour, where Rebellion PAC has got 3 new candidates. They're amazing, can't wait to tell you about them. But when we come back, Tucker Carlson versus Ben Shapiro. Huge heavyweight matchup last night at Turning Point USA. We'll give you all the videos and details. We'll be right back. Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think, is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets, where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. They'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks.
Ooh.
Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like, tyt.com/join, and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing.
Oh, that was disastrous.
This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.
Merry Christmas.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur and Jordan Uhl with you guys. Also, Dawn Whitehead, thank you for gifting 5 Young Turks memberships. All right, now, if you thought Epstein was the motherlode of news today, well, it is, but we've got a second doozy. Tucker Carlson versus Ben Shapiro. What do you got there, Jordan?
Take a look at this.
If Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk, if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk casting aspersions at TPUSA, then we, as people with a microphone, have a moral obligation to call that out by name.
Yeah, so never listen to Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson. It's of course a way of trying to cancel them. Anyone who talks to them, especially about Israel, should be canceled forever and ever and ever. So I think this is going to backfire spectacularly. And I think that the Israel First crowd has completely lost it. And we're going to show you clips of Tucker Carlson kicking his ass, in my opinion. But Jordan and I also have slightly different takes on this. First, let Jordan give you the facts and then we'll discuss.
So Ben Shapiro kicked off Turning Point's America Fest last night by going scorched earth on, as you saw, Candace Owens and, as Cenk mentioned, Tucker Carlson. Owens just met with Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, this week to privately discuss her claims about Charlie's death. And we've got more, including from Ben and Tucker, like you mentioned. But on this point, him calling out Candace Owens, we saw that conversation, Cenk, this week between Candace and Erica. How do you feel about Ben opening up this festival, this convention, by singling out Candace Owens specifically?
So the Candace Owens, look, I saw a video of hers recently that was totally unhinged, right? So I get the concerns about her for sure. But if it was just, hey, there's this unhinged person and she has some theories that might be true and some that are outlandish and totally false and etc. Okay, but I'm supposed to believe that it's a coincidence that Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin are attacking everyone who criticizes Israel on the right and putting them in the same bucket. No, it's not a coincidence. They're obsessed with Israel. That's all they ever care about. And that's what 100% of this fight is about.
Well, from there, Shapiro turned his attention to people who turn a blind eye to Candace Owens because they're friends and called them cowards. Take a look at this.
To take again the Candace Owens situation as an example. Friendship with public figures who say or do evil things is not an excuse for silence on the matter. So no, Tucker Carlson, it is not an excuse to go silent on Candace's targeting of TPUSA. And the people who refuse to condemn Candace's truly vicious attacks, and some of them are speaking here, are guilty of cowardice. Yes, cowardice.
Then he zeroed in on Tucker specifically for some of his podcast guests.
If you host a Hitler apologist, Nazi-loving, anti-American piece of refuse like Nick Fuentes, you know, the Nick Fuentes who said that the Vice President of the United States is a, quote, fat gay race traitor married to a... The person who said that Charlie Kirk was a, quote, idiot. The person who said, and pardon my language here, it's his quote, that he, quote, took Turning Point USA and f***ed it, and that's why it's filled with groypers. If you have that person on your show and you proceed to glaze him, you ought to own it.
He also brought up pseudo-historian Daryl Cooper, who, while on Tucker's show, tried distorting the facts around the Nazis' actions in World War II and called Winston Churchill the chief villain of the war. Tucker introduced him on that episode as, quote, the best and most honest popular historian in the United States. But some people will defend hosting guests like that under the guise of they're just asking questions.
Hosts are indeed responsible for the guests they choose and the questions they ask those guests. Emotive accusations, conspiracy theories, and just asking questions, that's lazy and stupid and misleading. Just asking questions is something my 5-year-old does, and it's really cute when it comes from my 5-year-old. But when grown men and women spend their days just asking questions without, you know, seeking answers, they are lying to you.
Shortly after that, Tucker Carlson took the stage. After initially joking that he missed the beginning of the program, he responded.
But I really thought that the impulse to deplatform people, or even to use the word platform as a verb, which it's not, deplatform and denounce. Why haven't you denounced somebody else? The whole like Red Guard cultural revolution thing that we so hated and feared on the left that we did everything we could to usher in a new time where you could have an actual debate.
And he explained his approach more, which he took from Charlie Kirk.
People should be able to debate, and that if you have something valid to say, if you're telling the truth, you ought to be able to explain it calmly and in detail to people who don't agree with you, and that you shouldn't immediately resort to shut up racist.
Now, Cenk, I think you and I might have different views here. What are your thoughts on this very public fight between these two?
Yeah, I'm definitely on Tucker Carlson's side on this issue. And Ben Shapiro wants us to show courage and to not just ask questions, but make statements. Oh, I'll be your Huckleberry. The problem is the Israelis. So there, I said it. Are you happy now? And I'll prove it to you, and then we'll have this discussion. First of all, the Israelis are the ones that demand that people, different countries throughout the world, Western nations and America, pass laws prohibiting speech. So don't let anyone discuss this. Don't let anyone discuss that. Don't let them say this. They made up this nonsense definition of anti-Semitism that includes criticizing Israel. What is that? That's a way of making criticism of Israel illegal. That's what thugs do. That's what authoritarian rule looks like. So I'm super clear. Okay, now let's turn to some of the people that he's mentioning. Candace Owens, look, some of the videos she points out and some of the things she says about Charlie Kirk's killing is true and is said by others, okay? So just the fact that Candace Owens said it doesn't make it invalid in and of itself, and it's over. Since she said it, you're no one else allowed to say it. No, that's not irrational and is not true. Now, can I at the same time say, yeah, other things that Candace Owens says to me sound crazy, okay? But do I have to go and denounce her? Do we all have to do like these rituals? And should we bring, some sort of witch paraphernalia so we can get the right, fire going for these witch hunts? So for Tucker Carlson, there's plenty of things he says that I don't agree with, right? But is he right about Israel? Yeah, absolutely. Is he right about freedom of speech? Absolutely. And then what does Ben Shapiro do? Everyone must denounce all enemies of Israel. Okay, yeah, a couple of them say crazy stuff. That gets you to Fuentes. So, oh no, nobody talked to Fuentes. Why? So Piers Morgan talked to him, and Piers Morgan did a very aggressive interview, and he got him on the record on a couple of important things. I like Piers a lot, and I don't know if I'm among the few, but I do. I have a relationship with him, and I think he does an interesting show that winds up getting us a lot of information and points of view we wouldn't have gotten before. But I would have been actually a little bit more aggressive with Fuentes. I don't know about aggressive in tone, more in terms of the type of questioning that happened. But so what? It wasn't my show. Who cares if he talks to Fuentes? Like, I'm not gonna ban that. That's insane, right? And then, okay, so Tucker talks to some World War II expert that I don't agree with at all. I took a class on international war crimes back when I was going to law school, and I was so lucky I had one of the Nuremberg prosecutors as my professor. He was in his 90s, okay? So I got to see some of the evidence about the war crimes in World War II and the Holocaust myself, and so I don't agree with those historians. Am I going to denounce Tucker for talking to them? No, I'm not going to. And so who cares if he talks to them? Who cares if they're wrong? This whole idea of shutting down speech is abhorrent to me, to Americans. It is the exact opposite of who we are. So hell no is my answer.
I don't, let's go, there's two things here. So let's start with the historian. It's not that he just talked to him, he agreed with him and called him honest. I don't think you would agree that someone saying that Winston Churchill was the chief villain of World War II is being honest. I mean, you just talked about your own educational experience, and I think we can all recognize that what happened. What's that?
I don't agree, Jordan. So I don't agree with him. I'm on your side on the content and the substance. Doesn't mean he's not honest. Maybe he does honestly think that Churchill was a part of it. I think that's wild. I don't think that's true at all.
There's another side to that.
So what if he thinks that?
Downplaying the actions of the Nazis? That's a
now
big.
You're saying that that's downplaying the actions of the Nazis, and maybe it is.
In addition to that, I don't have the exact examples. This is an hour-long conversation. This was a widely criticized interview.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to ban him? Should we just ban him?
That's not what I'm saying.
So tell me what you're saying then.
You're jumping to conclusions. I think that's the framing that you want, but that's not even what Ben Shapiro was saying. He's saying if you're gonna have these people on, own it. And Tucker isn't doing that. Tucker will say, we're just having, what about having a conversation? If you sit there and let people just say nonsense, open like Nazi apologia, that is on you. You're not just having a conversation, you're letting them spread hate to whatever your audience size is. And I think for Tucker, he wants to share an audience with people like Fuentes. That's his goal. That's why he didn't push back, and Piers Morgan did. Piers Morgan doesn't care if Nick Fuentes' fans watch his show. That's why he was willing to play back clips of Nick Fuentes saying openly anti-Semitic, openly racist, openly sexist stuff. He didn't care. Tucker does, because he wants part of that audience. For him, it's about views, clicks, and profit. So for him to throw his hands up, just a debate. Where's the debate, brother? You're not pushing back. You're just letting him say whatever he wants and nodding. That's not a debate.
So what do you want him to do, Jordan? You want him to just do the show you want and not the show he wants?
That's is how you conduct an interview. You don't just
okay. So you
criticize mainstream media constantly for letting establishment Democrats go on air, say absolute BS about healthcare, never push back, but suddenly Tucker is what is he supposed to do? Ask questions.
Yeah.
A universal standard.
Jordan, so you didn't like the way he conducted the interview. So
it wasn't
what?
An interview. He just nodded and agreed.
So what? So
okay,
what?
So what when the mainstream media turns a blind eye to Democrats taking corporate donations? So what? So what are they supposed to do, Jank? You don't like the way they're conducting the interview.
No. When the New York Times writes a good investigative story, which happens very rarely, but we cover it and we give them credit where credit is due. And then when they cover stories, they cover up for Epstein as they just did. They cover up for Israel as they do almost every time. Then we lambast them and we criticize them over it. Okay, so on Tucker, I don't agree with him on this World War II nonsense, okay? And I don't agree with him on a number of things, including what he said about Somali immigrants recently. And I agree with what he's saying about free speech and Israel. So what? Okay, so we just did it. So what else do I need to do? Do I need to slap him? Do I need to ritualistically denounce him? What do I need to do? And Jordan, you missed that every single one of these targets are people who criticized Israel, and we're all supposed to reach.
There are Jews on the left who criticize Tucker for the same thing.
Hold on. Are we all supposed to ritualistically target and destroy all opponents of Israel because we found something else they said that was wrong? Okay, perfect opportunity. Let's go destroy everyone who doesn't agree with Israel. My answer is hell no, F no, no way. And it's not a coincidence, and it doesn't have to do with anti-Semitism. It has to do with destroying the opponents of Israel, and you're being super dense if you don't see that. Tell me you don't see that. Tell me that that's not the connective tissue.
There are plenty of people on the left who also criticize them for the same things. Are they also doing it at the behest of Israel?
Criticizing Tucker Carlson, etc.? No,
yes.
they're playing into it like suckers.
Like, yeah, Jewish lefties, if not now, people like that. Those are the people who are criticizing. They're suckers for criticizing Tucker for having.
No, not for criticizing him. I just criticized them. No, I just criticized them. You could criticize any particular issue, any disagreement you have. That's called freedom, no problem. But this whole ritualistic denouncement, and no one should go on their shows, no one should ever talk to them. And don't tell me that's not what Ben Shapiro is asking for. He's definitively asking for that, and he's asked for it this entire time. Megyn Kelly, you're gonna get canceled if you better never talk to Candace. You better never talk to Tucker Carlson. Well, I'm not gonna respond to, I'm not gonna give in to those thugs. Then I'm not gonna let him cancel everyone who criticizes Israel. And if you're helping them do that, I'm sorry, yeah, you're a sucker for Israeli propaganda.
The pro-Palestinian left, who also separately criticizes these right-wing figures for after years of bigotry, years of Islamophobia, suddenly seeing a window for gathering or garnering a new audience rooted in anti-Semitism. That's just, yes, we gotta just turn a blind eye to it because they happen to, on the surface level, agree with us.
Oh, look, there's no critics of Israel left. Oh, what a coincidence, especially on the right wing.
There are plenty of critics.
They don't care about the left wing, Jordan.
There's plenty of critics of Israel on the left.
Yeah, but how much of an effect have we had?
What has Tucker done?
What has Tucker done?
What has he accomplished other than talk?
Jordan, are you seriously not noticing the massive effect that Tucker Carlson has had on getting the right wing to realize that Israel is not our ally, that they've taken 300 billion off us? They want another 100 billion. They want another 100 billion for a 20-year memorandum of understanding. They're trying to rob us of that money as we speak. Tucker Carlson is the most effective opponent of that robbery. I will under no circumstances cancel that brother who is doing amazing work on that issue. And then I will have no compunctions about criticizing him on other issues that I disagree with him on. Not complicated. Whereas apparently you're falling back to, that's it, illegitimate that shut down the most effective fighter against Israeli oppression in this country from the right. The right wing matters. If you only have the left wing, we'll never be able to defeat the Israel first crowd. You have to have the left wing and the right wing working together on the right project. Now, when Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes talk about the Jews, it drives me crazy. It's so wrong, it's factually incorrect, it's immoral, it doesn't make sense. We should only be talking about Israel. Now you say Tucker does that imperfectly. Fine, he does it imperfectly. No, I'm not gonna denounce or cancel or do any of those things. And by the way, Jordan, you have the luxury, and everybody else has the luxury of being able to say, oh, okay, he says something offensive about Jews or this or that. Okay, that's it. Well, he's also said good things about Muslims, which no one does, no one. And I'm supposed to cancel one of our few allies because they slightly offended Israeli interests? No, I'm not doing it. The minute that anyone in mainstream media says anything that says positive about Muslims as Tucker Carlson has, then I'll listen to them. But those are giant bigots that hate Muslims, that drive hatred towards us on behalf of Israel. And I'm not gonna play their game and go, yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Of course, sir, go back to crushing my people, sir. No, I'm not gonna do it. No, my people are not inferior, and we don't have to give away our rights and our speech and our allies to appease people who love Israel. No deal.
All right, well, let's get into, after this break, we'll get into his comments on Muslims.
You're messing with my Zen thing, man.
So lots of strong thoughts from you guys as well as us. So let me get to that. YouTube comments. These are all YouTube members. Sharon's Salmons writes in, I agree with Jordan totally. Libertine1 says Jordan is completely wrong. Shake my head. Kevin Shea says, I never would have thought I would see someone more passionate than Cenk. Christina Elisa Brown says Jordan is seeing like the plots and plans and the real purpose behind it, but Cenk is right in that it's freedom of speech, and Tucker has the right to have whoever he wants on to listen to them. Tom from Oz says Owens is striking nerves. She must be saying things they want hidden. Balk says I used to think only the left are ate its own, but I guess not. No, Box, the minute you oppose Israel 1%, you're targeted for destruction. So it doesn't matter if you're on the left, the right, or the middle. The pro-Israel crowd will try to destroy you in every way in this country, through business interests, through firings. I mean, the other day, Rez did a speech about how we're gonna destroy all of Israel's critics. We're gonna ruin their lives forever. We're gonna try to make sure they don't even get married. They never have another job again. There's a bunch of these thugs that are in power in this country, in media and in politics, and their job is to destroy Tucker Carlson, me, Anna, everyone who opposes their beloved Israel. And I'm absolutely sick of it. I'm vomiting it. So they can come for me. You guys, they already come for me. It doesn't matter. And since I'm not, part of a superior race, I guess, we get no protection, none, zero. People are constantly talking about murder the Muslims. The Muslims are the worst. The Muslims are dirty. The Muslims are terrorists, etc. How many people in mainstream media help us? None, zero. In fact, they're guilty. They're the ones who sons of bitches who've been spreading hatred towards Muslims my whole life. Oh, beloved Israel has to attack their Muslim neighbors and kill them. So let's do propaganda about how Muslims are terrorists. No, mainstream media is 1,000 times worse than Tucker Carlson when it comes to Muslims, but I know we don't count. We're inferior, we don't count. So yeah, excuse me if I say I count. Birdland baby, guys, you're both pretty. Thank you for trying to bring levity to it. That's on Twitch. Referring to the earlier Epstein story, Green New Dealer Dragon says, a pedo, an Israeli, and a Contra walk into a bar. But in every one of those stories, Jeffrey Epstein's there. Fab Forces is still 12 days before New Year's, but we're already seeing some fireworks. This is at TYT.com now. Asimov's prophet says Jordan Jenk is disagreeing with Tucker, but he's just saying you shouldn't cancel him for it. It's not a complicated idea, but apparently, like, people get really mad when I say that. Would you just disagree? So what? Okay. Pseudo Dragon says, anybody else remember when TYT used to criticize Tucker and recognize how dangerous he is? Or am I dating myself? Brother, so on some things he has not changed at all. On other things, he is diametrically opposed to the earlier Tucker Carlson position. So do you want me to move my position to his earlier position just to oppose him? That doesn't make any sense. When he's moved to anti-war and he's moved to stop the Israeli robbery, he's stopped the Israeli genocide. I'm supposed to disagree? No, I don't disagree.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
All right, back on TYT, Jake and Jordan with you guys. Also, Huck MD, thanks for joining. We appreciate it. They hit the join button below. Guys, do you see any other show that has honest debates like this? I mean, we're not playing, right? We exchange ideas, and I run this company, and I'm gonna make sure that happens for the rest of the time. I'm never gonna like, oh no, you have naughty ideas. No, you should be denounced and canceled. No. So I love you for joining. If this is a community you care about, you want to find out the different perspectives, you want people to be honest with you, then join us, tyt.com/join. Jordan.
Yeah, and I think we're probably gonna disagree on this one too, but then maybe on our last story, we'll agree, Jank. Okay. Take a look at this.
Well, what you're watching now, attacking millions of Americans because they're Muslims? It's disgusting. And I'm a Christian, I'm not a Muslim. I know there's a lot of effort to claim I'm a secret jihadi, I'm not. You should not attack people on those grounds, and you're seeing it from Republicans. What the hell are you doing? What you're doing is trying to divide the country, and I've lived through 50 years of this crap. All these fake race wars that they're always promoting. Oh, go hate each other while we loot the treasury. That's exactly what's going on. And most people are totally sick of that.
During his appearance at Turning Point's America Fest, Tucker Carlson slammed his fellow Republicans for their attacks on Muslim Americans. But is his outrage genuine? We may disagree on this one as well, Jank. But before I give folks more, what's your initial take here?
Yeah, I love that clip. Better than anyone in mainstream media ever on this issue, ever. I've never seen a cable news host. I've never seen a New York Times reporter, Washington Post reporter, or anyone from those traditional media outlets that give that strong a defense of Muslims in America. And of course, the pro-Israel crowd is gonna say, yeah, you have to denounce him. No, I don't denounce him. I celebrate what he just said there. And guys, if you haven't noticed, Tucker Carlson has changed on some things. He keeps emphasizing that we're all individuals and no one should ever be judged based on a group. If you say, okay, I conveniently believe him when he says something I don't like, but when he says things that are at the core of what we all believe on the left, what all Americans believe, boo, I don't believe him. No, that's very convenient. The Israelis want to destroy Tucker Carlson. I'm 100% against them. And on this, thank God Tucker Carlson is talking about Muslims as if they're human beings. And I'll listen to other people when they start doing likewise.
Well, defense of Muslims is something Tucker has done before, including in his recent interview with Piers Morgan.
I do think, again, that the over-amplification of the Islam problem, as people put it, or the Muslim problem, has been massively overstated.
Well, that's an obviously.
Yeah.
Hate the Muslims. No, we know where that's coming from.
Obviously. I don't like it.
I hate it.
In my high street alone, in West London, most of the businesses would have Muslim employees there. Or
but also, how is hate the Muslims better than hate the Christians or hate the Jews?
It's all the same.
It's the same.
And bringing it back to the Turning Point Conference, Tucker didn't just call out Islamophobia. He also condemned Christians for using their religion to defend the killing of innocent people, including Palestinians in Gaza.
Should also be very on guard against people who try to leverage the word of God, the words of Jesus, for political ends. God is not on any country's side. And if someone is telling you otherwise, that is just not true. And I would also call your attention to the very obvious prohibitions in the New Testament against killing the innocent. We are not, as Christians, allowed to kill the innocent, period. You are seeing now a very intense effort to convince you otherwise. Oh, it's fine. They deserved it. Really, did their children deserve it? If a man commits a crime, do we kill his kids? I don't care if it's in Minneapolis or Gaza City. No, we don't.
He's been outspoken in his opposition to the genocide in Gaza and America's support of it. But despite his passionate plea to his fellow conservatives to stop attacking Muslims, is it really fair to say he himself is not Islamophobic, or at the very least, xenophobic? He recently, 2 days ago, made a video about Somali immigration into the States that he titled, Tucker Carlson on the Somali invasion and the self-loathing ideology destroying America. And the description of that video reads, why would you decide to import primitive Somali tribes and encourage them not to assimilate? The only possible explanation is that you're trying to destroy the country. In the video, he describes Somalis as clannish and poor. He also posted a separate clip from that interview titled, Tucker, She Married Her Brother, about this baseless right-wing conspiracy theory about Ilhan Omar that no one has ever been able to provide any evidence justifying. Tucker didn't specifically talk about Islam in that video about Somalis, but that's a country with a 99% Muslim population. So the subtext is there. But in the past, Tucker has actually defended Trump's Muslim ban, which Carlson argued didn't actually target Muslims. In 2017, he argued that the attitudes of faithful Muslims are not Western at all and include a tolerance of violence that you don't find among Presbyterians or Jews. Similar to his use of primitive to describe Somalis in his episode, he once said in a radio interview that people from Iraq are semi-literate primitive monkeys.
Iraq is a crappy place filled with a bunch of, semi-literate primitive monkeys. But I just have zero sympathy for them or their culture, a culture where people just don't use toilet paper or forks.
Hey, and the way they treat women, I agree with you. Their culture is, but you're in their homeland, and you're over there as an American who they hate, and they want nothing more than the Americans off of their soil. So they're not going to play games.
They can just shut the up and obey, is my view.
How could you salvage Iraq at this point?
I don't, it's beyond our control. I mean, if somehow the Iraqis decided to behave like human beings or something. He'd need to say, look, I'm a bigot, okay? I'm a bigot. I don't like Islamic extremists. Like, if you are really heavily into Islam, I'm sorry, I don't care for you that much. And I don't care what that sounds like. You can call me a racist. You can come whatever you want.
And he's claimed that immigration is making America poorer, dirtier, and more divided. And on an episode of a show from August 18th, he claimed that there is a movement around the world to kill whites through mass migration. Cenk.
Yeah. So breaks down in a couple of different categories. So first of all, I don't agree with him on that Somali talk. So very much against it. The talk against immigrants, very much against it. It doesn't mean I have to cancel him. I'm just against it. I solved it. Number two, don't tell me about look, I get it. You're pointing out your point of view that you think that there's subtext against Muslims there. Maybe. On the other hand, there is overtext, clear text of him saying, don't hate Muslims to his millions of followers repeatedly. So I'm not as worried about the subtext as the brother who's telling people in America for the first time, especially from the right, don't hate Muslims, they're individuals. So, okay, so we go, then there's another category is older clips. So the calling the Iraqis monkeys, etc. We've covered that on the show before, terrible. And so I'm against it. But it appears that he has changed on that. You could say, okay, I hate him, so I don't believe him, and I'll never believe him, and I'll always hold him accountable for just his comments in 2008, but I will not give him credit for the excellent comments he's making today. Well, that doesn't make any sense, to me at least. So like if someone says before, I hate Muslims, and remember I'm atheist, but I grew up Muslim, my family's Muslim. So if somebody says before, I don't like Muslims, well, I'm okay, that's bad. And then they say, oh, but now I get that I was wrong, and we should treat Muslims as equals. Well, great, isn't that great? What am I still supposed to yell at him? Oh, yeah, but you once didn't think that, so I hate you forever, even though you've come to my side on this particular issue. No, I'm not going to do that. Jordan, those set of clips that you played in the beginning from today and not from decades ago are some of the best defense of Muslims and Palestinians I've ever seen from a national media figure. And so it's easy for us to do it on the left, but it almost never comes from the right, and it almost never comes from the middle. The mainstream, who have been virulently anti-Muslim. And a couple more things here that I just want to point out real quick. One, he went and said killing of the innocents in Gaza is morally repugnant. And God, I've been waiting for someone in the right wing to care about Palestinians my whole life. And you want me to reject that guy? You must be out of your mind. And the second thing is he mentioned how anti-Muslim propaganda in the West is ops. What did he mean by that? The Israelis literally drive propaganda against Muslims in the West so you'll hate them and finance Israel as they destroy their Muslim neighbors. So the fact that he realizes that propaganda operation is happening and got Piers Morgan to agree that it's happening, those are amazing developments. I'm not going to reject those. I'm going to welcome those with open arms.
It undercuts his message when this very week he's using the same description that he used for Iraqis in the 2000s to describe Somalis. He's calling them both primitive. He's talking about how mass migration is dividing our country. It's the same thing. So I don't see this change. What I see is an opportunist saying something different at a new venue. Because on his show, he's relaxed. You see his true self. You see him selecting topics like zeroing in on Somalis, saying they're dividing our country, saying they're primitive. But then at America Fest, where everyone, they're doing it, that's the night they did the big remembrance of Charlie. Oh, we got to carry on his spirit of free debate. And I'm a Christian now. I love everyone. Okay, like 72 hours ago, you're talking, you shouldn't make blanket statements about groups of people. 72 hours ago, you published a video making a blanket statement about groups of people. So I don't buy it. I don't think it's sincere. He can say one thing to a different audience, but I don't think he means it.
I think the way he describes Somalis is, I can't, I think it's terrible, and I don't like it, and I don't want it, and I disagree with it, okay? But it's not the same thing as being against a group of people. It's, are there countries that are poorer than other countries? And yes, should we deride them and smear them? No, right? But no, that doesn't wipe away all of his the positive things he's saying now. And I barely care if it's disingenuous or not. Why do I care? So here's a brother saying, please treat Muslims equally, and it would be the Christian thing to do that. But because he said other bad things, in our opinion, politically, we're supposed to denounce that? What do you want me to do? I'm not going to denounce it. And Jordan, this is super important. Whenever there's the slightest infraction about whether it's a pro-Israel person or, let's be honest, a Jewish person, okay, the whole country erupts. Congressional hearings, laws are passed, they're canceled. Okay, Puka rubbed his hands together, having no idea. This is a receiver for the Rams in the NFL, having no idea what that's about. And instantly there was congressional representatives calling for the Rams to cut him instantly, okay? So whenever there's an infraction against one particular people, The country all has to stand up and denounce. When there's a million people saying the worst things in the world about Muslims, no one gives a goddamn. And here comes an ally from the right, and people want me to reject him. Hell no, no. So the minute I see Jake Tapper or Anderson frickin' Cooper or Wolf Blitzer or anyone in mainstream media give a defense of Muslims like Tucker Carlson did, I'll begin to consider their opinion. But as long as they're driving Israeli propaganda that you should all hate Muslims and Muslims are terrorists and the Israelis are poor little innocent victims, and not telling people that it's giant Israeli propaganda to try to get the whole world to hate Muslims, then okay, then we'll have a conversation. Until then, they are morally inferior to Tucker Carlson. How do you like them apples?
Well, we got to go to break. We could spend another hour on this, but after the break, we'll talk about the families who apparently are so devastated their kids voted for Zoran.
Tucker Carlson, a terrible friend.
All right, I'm going to try to read as many of these as I can. It's about the debates that we're having, and I'm reading them blind, so wish me luck. Dawn Whitehead writes in on Super Chat, appreciate the debate between you two. Jordan, you bring your own point of view to the show. I appreciate that. I love TYT. You guys offer food for thought on important issues. Stephanie, Kyle, thank you for the donation. Christina Lisa Brown says, respect for the passion, honest and genuine convo, Jordan and Jang. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, fam. Love being with TYT family to fight truth to power. Catch the June Bug says, I never thought I'd be in agreement with Tucker, but here I am. We need voices on the right. We need all the voices we can get while we still have voices. We need a coalition. The awakening is here. Couldn't agree more. Thank you to all of you guys. Bog says, it's good to have these conversations. I couldn't agree more. Okay, so like Jordan and I just vehemently disagreed, and then the world blow up. Do we have to denounce each other? If you're on either side of the debate, you have to denounce the whole show because the other side of the debate was shown? Okay, well, none of that would matter because Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin would cancel the whole show because we once made a criticism of Israel. So of course all opponents must be destroyed. Okay, I would never help those guys in a million years. They want my help in destroying Tucker Carlson? Yeah, long walk off a short dock. 00083 says, get well soon. I know exactly what you're going through. I'm sick and I'm stuck at work. I hear you, brother. Speedglass 4841 says, happy holidays. Remember Jesus? We could use a guy like that. We could use a guy like that around now. Freestyle 888 says on YouTube member section, if Jordan kept his cat on his lap throughout the debate, I'd agree with him more. The Forsaken one says, love you both. Love the debates. You're right in my opinion. Jenk on strategy, Jordan on morality. I get it. Shan11 says, I love Muslims. I never understood it. An Iraqi German doctor delivered my daughter. She was the result of my late husband returning from Iraq. It made my late husband look within. All you have to do is have some normal human interaction with a Muslim, and you'll know, oh, wow, it turns out they're human. But our media, the sick, disgusting haters of Muslims, they're all guilty. They've kept that fact from you. No, hate the Muslims. They're all terrorists and dark and savages. I loathe mainstream media. They've spread hatred towards my people for the last 40, 50 years. Oh, but it helped Israel. Okay. Snorin says, I like Jordan, but I agree with Jank. Lady AF says, if Tucker doesn't speak with these people respectfully while interjecting some sense here and there, then hate will just fester unchecked in the internet underbelly. Luna Tickle says, it's good to have disagreement and not one mouthpiece. And on TYT.com, Cabbage says, ultimately, we all have to call them as we see them. Santos Juante says, will Jordan name the vein that pops out of the side of his head after Jank? Good question. Okay, I lives in America says, so I have this random question I've never asked before. Has Tucker Carlson ever condemned his views on the Great Replacement theory? It's a good question, I don't know. But if you notice, he's now saying that we should not judge people based on what they're from. it's if you watch at length, he's almost making an argument for diversity, which is the opposite of what he used to say on Fox News, which I'm actually a little bit shocked by. Those are positive developments. I like those.
Tucker Carlson, a terrible friend.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Jordan, and Bear and Sebastian, they just joined. We appreciate you so much, guys. Either hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. Annual membership gets you a couple of months off, so that's the best way if you can at tyt.com/join. All right, Jordan.
Take a look at this.
What does it feel like to be a Jewish New Yorker who realizes their own kid voted for Zohran Mamdani? One mom told me she worries her kid was, quote, brainwashed. Another was so concerned about her daughter voting for Zohran that when she flew to see her at Northwestern University, she took along her absentee ballot so she could supervise the vote.
While Zohran Mamdani tries to bring New Yorkers together, he may be tearing some families apart. According to a new article from the Free Press's Olivia Reingold, the Jewish parents who raised Mamdani voters. It's like they're talking about these kids like they found a crack pipe in their backpack. But to preface, Reingold is the same Free Press journalist we talked about last month, who denied there was a famine in Gaza with the piece titled, "They became symbols for Gazan starvation, but all 12 suffer from other health problems." But in this article, Reingold focuses on the devastation some Jewish New Yorkers are feeling because their anti-Zionist children voted for Zohran Mamdani. Reingold writes, parents are still shocked, confused, and upset by their children's radical politics. They wondered if they should have parented differently. Did their children get enough Jewish education? Were they brainwashed by their elite private schools? Where did they go wrong? One parent who said his daughter voted for Mamdani because she refused to vote for Andrew Cuomo due to his alleged sexual harassment said, maybe I failed in the sense that the kids didn't go to Israel enough. It would have been better if they went more, just to see the lies they're being told. But are their children's politics actually radical? No. Most just really liked his policies. Lisa Fields Lewis, who is a mother of 2 college-age children, described her freak out after her children expressed interest in Mamdani's free bus program and tackling the city's income gap, both extreme. Lewis was raised by an Israeli mother. Her father survived Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. She said the rise of Mamdani awakened a generational trauma in her. Now she can't shake the feeling that history is repeating itself. And kids don't seem to realize just how dangerous Mamdani's views are, Lewis said. They definitely love the socialism. They feel that life is inequitable, and they probably think that Israel is doing really bad things. I feel sad. I feel envious of my friends whose kids are proud Zionists, or at least have the capacity for critical thinking. Another woman named Galit Pollock told Reingold she staged interventions for her 28-year-old son because he liked Mamdani's ideas of making New York City affordable. If you're a real Zionist, that's not a Zionist thing to do, she remembers telling her son at the kitchen table. It's conflicting. If your life costs a little less, that's not as big of a deal as Jews feeling uncomfortable. Cenk, I feel like I'm just in another world reading some of these quotes. These are kids talking about economic policy, and they're being treated like they're ushering in Holocaust too.
Yeah, look, first of all, I've never seen a piece like this. It's amazing, where parents are beating themselves up for raising kids that are more moral than them. Like, oh, our kids might care about a genocide. Oh God, I wish we hadn't taught them that. Oh. And you saw former Obama staffers literally talk about, maybe we overtaught the Holocaust. You know, the Nazis were strong and now the Israelis are strong, and they're making the wrong connection. And the Palestinians are weak and we're slaughtering them. And the Jews were weak and they got slaughtered. That was the wrong connection. No, that was the right connection. I mean, it's ironic because they actually did teach them well. There's a lot of Jewish culture that is beautiful and terrific. Question the rabbi, question authority figures, help the underdog, or the underprivileged, etc. Those are beautiful Jewish values that were taught to so many people. And now to see some of the older generation, and not all of the older generation, there's tons of older Jews who are very much part of the peace movement and are, you should never make blanket statements about anybody. And look, they're complaining that young Jewish Americans are too moral and don't discriminate enough, right? So that means young Jewish Americans are doing a great job, right? They're wonderful. So it isn't about any particular faith. But in this case, these people that are basically telling on themselves, so the group I'm talking about are the people that are in this piece. They're saying, I mean, we have this dirty Muslim, Mamdani, and I can't believe I raised someone moral enough to not care. You should hate Mamdani, he's Muslim. And if you were a good person, you would hate Muslims. No, they wouldn't. No, you accidentally taught him the right thing in the beginning. It's disgusting that you're regretting it now. And they said, well, I have another excuse. He's criticized Israel. I'm uncomfortable. So you're not uncomfortable because your beloved Israel slaughtered 70,000 people and 20,000 children. That doesn't make you uncomfortable. But someone saying that, I am uncomfortable, kill more of their kids. And my kids, I'm so embarrassed. You're not in favor of the slaughter that our beloved Israel is doing. You people are sick, sick. I'm so glad that your kids are so much more moral than you. I'm so glad that they care about all of America and all of New York and all of the issues and affordability, and they don't discriminate against Muslims like you sick parents do. Again, just the people in this piece. And if you're in that older Jewish community and you hate that your kids are more moral than you, and just stop talking down to them too. They don't know the facts. If they knew the facts, they would know that when we do a genocide, it's awesome. Never again only applies to us. And if we get to do it again and again and again to the Palestinians, we didn't teach them right. We should have taught them, so you're supposed to occupy the Muslims for 58 years. You're supposed to brutalize them. You're supposed to never give them their freedom. You're supposed to strip all dignity and human worth from them. You're supposed to do propaganda against them and get the whole country to hate them. And then when we attack them and we take their land, that way we look like the victims. Oh, I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable that our genocide was exposed by some people in the media. Oh, boo-hoo. I'm uncomfortable that my kids are good, wonderful, moral Americans. Well, I guess that's a sad day for you. Okay, we are out of time. I could say more. Those parents.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah. They're so stupid too. They're so freaking biased. They're like the most biased people in the world. And their kids are seeing things clearly. They're like, how dare you not be biased? Us above everyone. Do you not see yourself, you idiots? You sound just like the Germans. And that's why one of them said, maybe we criticize the Germans too much. That is unbelievable. It's record-breaking irony, record-breaking. Young Jews, I love you. Way to be moral, way to be Americans, way to care about all of us. All right. Again, there's wonderful older Jews, Ben Cohen, Robert. Well, I can list you thousands, okay? All right, anyways, when we come back, dramatic announcement from Rebellion PAC. Whoa, and we're gonna talk to someone who's an expert on cults. I'll ask her about the Israeli cult. Anyways, all right, Jordan, you're awesome. Everybody stay here, we'll be right back. Welcome back to TYT, the Revolution. Dramatic announcement. Rebellion PAC has added 3 new candidates, so now up to 6 overall. This time around, we're adding Hartzell Gray. You saw that happen live on the show. He's running in Missouri 4. He's a young, dynamic populist out of Kansas City. Shoykat Chakrabarti, former co-founder of Justice Democrats, former chief of staff to AOC, and a guy who just knocked out Nancy Pelosi in California 11. She was worried about losing. She stepped down, and Shoykat is now running against establishment candidates, as populist left as it gets. And then Josh Turek, the leading Senate candidate in Iowa on the Democratic side. That one was one of our toughest decisions. There was another good candidate there, and we showed that to you guys. They both came on the show, and and we're blessed to have 2 good candidates in that race. But we discussed it with a lot of allies and did a lot of analysis and decided to go with Josh Turek in Iowa. So rebellionpac.com, and we're going to try to support all these candidates. Of course, they come on top of the 3 we already had: Representative Ro Khanna, and then Randy Bryce in Wisconsin 1, and Richard Ojeda in North Carolina. Richard Ojeda is going to join us for a town hall where you guys get to ask him questions. That's going to happen soon right here on the Young Turks. And so these are all populist left candidates. They all care about economic populism, serving the American people. None of them take corporate PAC money. None of them take foreign government money. So all clean, all honest, and if they win their races, it'll be spectacular. And a lot of them are in red districts. And Josh, obviously, if he wins in Iowa, he could tilt the Senate in favor of the Democrats and be the right kind of Democrat. So it's exciting to see, and we're adding more and more to our slate as we go. So that's what a populist revolt looks like. That's what a rebellion looks like. So 3 new candidates joining the rebellion. Okay, now we're gonna do a different segment on cults now. It could be pretty applicable to the cult in Congress as well. But we're bringing on what's some of you know as the knitting cult lady, which is a fun title already. It's Daniela Mestenak Young. She's an author and cult scholar. And yes, she actually does knit. There it is, literally, okay? And she's a TEDx speaker. She's a sex cult survivor, a US Army combat veteran, and yes, an advanced knitter. Okay, oh, and her upcoming book is The Culting of America, What Makes a Cult and Why We Love Them, which is interesting. So Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Cenk.
No problem. So tell me, what makes a cult?
Exploitation of labor. It's organized crime.
Oh, that's super interesting. I had not heard that definition before. Okay.
It's a much longer and more complicated answer than that, of course. And I have a 10-part definition of cult, and that's what I go into in the book. But the thing that changed my life was when I heard someone say cults are all about labor. And then I understood.
That's so interesting because this has kind of been a theme for us a little bit. I've talked to a number of people about cults recently, and you're right that I had not connected those dots until now, because like the Scientology cult survivor talked about how they kept taking the children and using them for labor and more labor and nonstop work, right? And then we had a Christian nationalist cult survivor, similar story. Obviously, there's also abuse, right? So, is the point labor, free labor? Is the point sexual abuse? Is the point power?
The point is power and labor. You know, I personally truly believe that cult leaders are generally sociopaths, and part of that is just the love of playing power games. And they don't necessarily have to have a logic. It's just the power game for the power game's sake. But cults always come down to labor, and money is part of how we represent labor. But the sexual abuse, is part of power. The exploiting people's labor is part of power.
So I get why they do it, right? If you can convince a whole bunch of people to do your work for you and make money for you, and then you abuse that power in whatever ways, and you're a bad guy, I get it. But what's really hard to understand is, how do they work? Like, why does it work on people? I mean, that's the second half of your book, right? Why we love them. How is it that they are able to get people to follow them in what from the outside looks like a crazy scenario? Why would you do all this stuff for this guy for no reason?
Yeah. So that's the mission. And it's what we call a transcendent mission, which is something that is beyond, right? Time, space. It's really, really big. Save the children is often some kind of the transcendent mission. And we see cult leaders will often get into either politics or some sort of charity work, including religious-based charity works, because those are easy things to what I call missionize, like weaponize the mission. It allows them a convenient looking front. And nobody joins a cult because a cult leader is charismatic. They join a cult because a charismatic person weaponizes a mission and then builds a structure to coerce them.
Super interesting. So how do you know if you're part of a good mission or secretly a cult mission?
If you joke about being a cult, it's bad news bears, okay? I think we need to ask ourselves, like, is the mission achievable? First of all, right? Like, is it achievable in this lifetime? How are we defining it? And then where's the labor? And what tactics are being used to get the labor? Because so many things with missions are asking people to just constantly self-sacrifice. And that's actually the way cults break you, is with the self-sacrifice. So for me, the line, it can be as good of a mission as possible, but if it's using coercive tactics to get more out of people, it's harming the individuals that are involved.
That one's a little tougher for me, because I can see how really good missions to cure breast cancer, United Way, whatever it might be, might ask you to feed the homeless. You're going to do free labor to feed the homeless, but that really is the mission. So it's a little tough to know where to draw the line.
And this is where, for me, I concentrate on the tactics, right? Like, if you are using coercive tactics to get people to give more than they would otherwise, this gets very confusing, because the military and tech and all of the things from which we get our corporate culture uses a little bit of coercive tactics. And this is part of what I'm trying to show in the book. I think often that nonprofits end up exploiting people. But another thing is that I do not buy the narrative that it started off good and then turned into a cult. I've never seen an example of this. Absolutely, can something start off good and end up harming some individuals? Yes. But cult leaders, they learn how to do this, they practice this, and then they go for their prey.
So what are some of the coercive tactics?
Okay, so keeping people skinny is one. It's a very interesting one we find now. Isolation is one of your biggest ones, right? And isolation these days does not have to be on physical communes anymore, but controlling what your people are ingesting. That can be physically, that can be mentally, psychologically, right? Just complete control. And then another tactic is self-sacrifice, getting people to separate themselves from their personal identity, which is what you spent your whole life building as you were growing up, was this individual identity. And the cult is going to ask you to separate yourself from that and break that down so that you're only doing what's good for the group. And that's how they eventually get into abuse and exploitation.
Okay, that makes sense. So like the part where I'm like hesitating is a lot of times asking people to sacrifice for a larger good is a wonderful thing. But I see what you're saying when you say self-sacrifice, when they say, but in order to do that, you have to give up your individuality. Yeah, no,
Yes.
you don't.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Exactly. And again, I have a 10-part list of what makes something a cult, and self-sacrifice is only number 4, right?
Right.
And it is also the constant self-sacrifice. There is a difference with sometimes having to do a lot for a cause that you care about, but then getting to go and recover. In the cult, you don't get that. In the army, you don't get that. You are right back on it the next day as the mission requires. And so you are constantly breaking yourself in service of the mission, but you're also breaking your ability to kind of push back against something that the group is doing that is harmful to you.
Yeah. So, but as you were describing it, of course, the army popped into my head, right? The military of any country, and other things like fraternities, etc. So we'll get to all that in a sec. The isolation part also makes a lot of sense. But then I've done so much self-sacrifice. I feel like that I was like, wait, am I in a cult? And then you said they need to be skinny, and I was like, yes, I'm not in a cult. Okay, so I dodged that bullet. Okay.
I have this thing, which is one of my fun contributions to the field that I call the skinny white woman. And it was literally, I was watching Allison Mack getting arrested, and I was like, why? And then Ghislaine Maxwell, and I was like, what is it? And I was like, oh, she's whitewashing the sins of the cult leader, right? Because in sort of American white supremacy, you have the pure, good white woman. And, that's how they do it, right? The cult leader, often male, especially in these larger commune cults, is usually kind of a ridiculous flub, actually. But you have these very posh, skinny, controlled white ladies kind of like holding it up.
Interesting.
And also, of course, keeping you skinny just is a good way to control you.
Yeah, maybe it's another part of self-sacrifice, right? And
it is a visible form of self-sacrifice. And so it becomes one of those things. And it's also something else that's important to cults. It's never enough, right? You're never skinny enough. You are always striving. You can always be more. And that is what the cult needs from you, is the constant mission, the constant striving, the constant work.
Yeah. So I want to get back to the military and other potential cults, including political ones that we often talk about on the show. But before we do that, you survived a cult. Tell me about that. What cult was it, and what happened?
So I was born 3 generations into like the leadership circle of the Children of God cult. The Children of God cult is one of these sort of run-of-the-mill 60s cults where he takes evangelical purity, let's call it, and his unique value proposition is he switches it and he says, we're going to have free love, which very quickly turns into what I call forced polyamory. Then he starts with religious prostitution and gets into kind of actually advocating pedophilia. So that's one of the things Children of God is famous for. Also, a founding member of Fleetwood Mac joined the cult early on. And most famously, Rose McGowan and Joaquin and River Phoenix were all celebrities that grew up in that cult because our product was performance. And so I was born in the Philippines in this cult, spent my life growing up in Asia and Latin America, dancing on the streets, dancing in videos. There's one video of 6 white children doing an apocalypse rap in downtown Rio.
Wow.
The End Time Rap, it's called. And yeah.
So how did they start the sex, and when? I'm afraid to ask.
How did they start the what? Sorry.
The sex and when? Like, so they're using you to do like rap videos in the streets, etc., doing all this exploitive stuff. When do they turn to, oh, by the way, this also involves sex?
Yeah, I mean, and this is one of those things where if you talk to almost any of the joiners, they will tell you, no, in the beginning it was just about Jesus and love and, recruiting all these hippies who wanted to change the world, and he was the prophet of God. But, he was a heavily abused boy turned into man who was already being very abusive to his children and daughters-in-law, etc. When he started the cult. So it was always there in the background. He very quickly discarded his wife that he started the organization with, took up with his younger secretary, his skinny white woman, if you will, and then started pimping her out. And then that became a revelation to all of the women. And this is the 70s. By the 80s, he's on the cover of Time magazine as a sex cult. And then they really have to like flee, scatter all over the world and whitewash. And I mean, they had a very, very successful whitewash because the Children of God would perform twice at the White House in the 90s.
Wow.
But they basically said, okay, we're going to stop doing all the outward open sex stuff, and we're going to just be the family of love. Internally, I believe when you don't change the values of the organization, right, the abuse never stops. So there was still plenty of that for us growing up.
Yeah. How'd you wind up leaving the cult?
So when I was 15, I climbed over the walls of the commune and went to go fellowship with a non-believer so that they would kick me out.
So when did you realize, wait, this isn't right? Because when you're growing up in something, it's so hard to see objectively.
So I was suffering some very, very horrendous abuse at the age of 5 and 6, and definitely had the moment of being like, if this is God, forget it. But I kind of just don't ever think I believed in any of it. I think I'm a like sort of neurodivergent atheist that was born to religious extremists. And from the age of 11, I was trying to make my plans to escape. I, mostly self-taught Brazilian Portuguese so that I could go off into the woods if I could. Part of the reason why they kept moving us around the world was to keep us destabilized, geographic abuse. And part of the problem of being third generation is all of your living family members are kind of connected to this. In the end, I would get sort of lucky because my mother, who's only 15 years older than me, had been at some point married off to an older man who had some children on the outside. And one of them agreed to take me in when I was 15. And that was when I first, moved to the United States for the first time and into the whole great state of Texas cult. So that was really fun too.
All right, so let's talk about how it connects to other cults. Because when you say, oh, he dumped his first wife and started having sex with his secretary, it reminds me of Joseph Smith, right? And the Mormon religion. And he says, oh yeah, God's talking to me. And then one day he comes out and says, oh yeah, by the way, God says that I should have sex with my maid. And everybody's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Except his wife. His wife's like, God didn't tell you that. And he's like, shut up. And then he takes the maid, and then he takes a couple other people, etc. So, and religion overall asks you for a lot of sacrifice, and then tells you that your religion is the right religion, and you definitely shouldn't listen to the other religions.
Yeah.
A form of isolation to some degree. So where do we draw the line?
So here's the thing. Cults and religions are separate. So in my definition of cult, the number 2 is they give you a worldview. It doesn't have to be a religion. It's a worldview. And often it's formed out of a bunch of random things. Religions, especially, patriarchal religions from about 2,000 years ago, happen to be a little bit easy to use to manipulate people if you want to. But the problem is never like the ism or the entity, right? It's never the ideology. You can make up, you can write a sci-fi novel and make it your cult. We call that Scientology. Which then, then branched all of the EST and a Landmark and, all those big, large group awareness trainings that have trained some of your corporate people. One of the things, so I was an intelligence officer in the military, and the way we tracked was through tactics, techniques, and procedures. And this is one of the things I keep saying. It's like, I just want people to see the tactics. And so this is, the first book I wrote is my story, Uncultured, about going from cult to army and how that paralleled. But then this book, I wanted to show people, like, here are the tactics in like real cults that you all recognize, right? Like Mormons, like Children of God, like these big bad guys. And then here are the tactics, same tactics in the US military. And then here are the tactics in organizations around us. And it has only escalated severely in the 3 years that I have been writing the book.
So Daniela, tell us a little bit about the similarities between the cult you were in and the US military.
Yeah, well, you definitely don't know what you signed up for. So for me, it was the first day of basic training. You're standing there, you're holding this 50-pound duffel bag over your head, and you're getting yelled at. And I'm there, I'm 22 years old. I've just finished college. I've been out of the cult for about 6 years. And I recognized the tactic, I was like, okay, I know what they're doing. I know they're not going to hit me. I know this is going to go for like an hour or two. And I had this realization like, oh, I just joined another cult, And so basic training is sort of your typical cult indoctrination, right? They take you away, they change your name to Private so-and-so, right? They isolate you completely from everything you've known. If you're a man, they cut off your hair, and then they start working the brainwashing tactics on you. One of my bigger realizations as well in the similarities was that a military deployment, when you go away together as a unit, like you're going to have a cultic experience. And that to me, like as an organizational psychologist, was like, wow, that tells me a lot about, soldier suicidal ideology. And it tells me a lot about even just the struggles to reintegrate and kind of how bonkers it is, right? To go from like a year in a cult at war and then just come home and go back to your family like nothing happened. And I mean, finally, it's really on the other side where like every struggle of veterans fitting back into society is the same. Like I'm actually writing a musical now. And my cult baby survivors and my veteran survivors have the same struggles.
Yeah, it's interesting. Look, that analogy is like pretty stark because what does the military do? They break down your identity. They don't want you to be an individual. They want you to be an army of one. And then what do they want you to do with that? Well, then they're going to program you, and they program you in that case to kill. And you have to break down the person's identity, and you have to get them to buy into that way of thinking. Otherwise, human beings don't naturally kill one another.
Right.
You got to train them to be able to kill.
And this is what I always say. I'm like, any discussion of the military is what militaries do is they program individuals to conduct violence on behalf of state, right? Like that's what it is. There's a reason you want to be talking to all the veterans around you right now, because number one, they never deprogram us, right? But like you're becoming a different person, right? You don't even get to go back to being a civilian ever again. Now you're a veteran. Like you have been changed by your experience in this. And I think some of these things are we're seeing right now why they're so necessary. the geographic abuse, for example, right? We move soldiers all around the country every 3 to 6 years. It wreaks havoc on us and our families and our relationships. But it is so that a tyrant cannot take over and have a bunch of military officers with loyal followings. You don't have a single brigade in the active United States military that has a single political leaning, right? So you cannot have this kind of runaway Civil War-esque stuff that you had before. So they're doing it for a reason, these tactics. Yeah. I just think the conversation we're not willing to have is that we ask 1% of our country to be in a cult in order to protect us. Yeah. And I think if we're not going to end the US military, but I think if we had that conversation, we could maybe lower the suicide rate. We could maybe help not only with veterans when they come out, but maybe with even some of the toxic, awful behavior inside the military as well.
Yeah, so I totally get what you're saying, and obviously it applies to all militaries, not just the US military. So finally, let's get to cults potentially in nationalism and politics. Because they want you to be, let's pick a couple of different things, a Republican, a Democrat, and you have to be only that, and you have to hate the other side, and these days, don't interact with the other side, okay? Stay in your isolation, stay in your group, don't have any individual ideas. You have to believe in orthodoxy, and you cannot waver from orthodoxy, right? So, and then you've got the nationalistic cults. The Turks are the best, and being in favor of Turks is a moral good in and of itself, and is a more important moral good than actually doing the right thing to individual actors, right? I picked Turks just because I'm Turkish, right? But it obviously applies to any nationality. So are those in some ways a cult?
Yeah, I mean, especially here where you have binary, right? Like what cults thrive on binary thinking, right? You're either in or out, it's good or bad, it's all or nothing. And in Democrat versus Republican politics, like just by being binary, that is going to be somewhat culty. And also, as you alluded to, the isolation, I think I was saying 5 years ago, the first sign of war is when communications stop between the two sides, right? And like we are in a modern day sort of version of this. And technology has changed the game in so many interesting ways because it's actually breaking down a lot of the OG cults that relied on more physical isolation, but it's really helping, any whack job with an idea get a platform, but it's also really helping to separate Americans. There are, I'm sure, entire Americans that don't even know that this platform exists, right? Whereas like it used to be, I say when my grandfather joined a cult in 1970, if you wanted to isolate an American, you kind of had to take them away to your compound in Texas or Brazil or the state of Utah. In order to control what they were going to have access to. But now with sort of an app for everything, for every taste, we are so polarized. We're not seeing what the other side is seeing, and we're not talking to each other anymore. And there's absolutely become an all or nothing aspect to our politics. And then if you notice, every election cycle now, it is the apocalypse, right? And this has been going on for at least 20 years, if not since the Reagan era, when I feel that a lot of this got started. And then I think there's obviously like MAGA is a cult. Like that is a cult. They even refer to themselves as a group. And it's kind of the culmination of a 40, 50 year, conglomeration of all of these cults of idea that have been building. And then somebody put them all together.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So but I don't think MAGA is the only cult in politics, right? So
I agree.
So let's say take two on our side. So a lot of the extreme left says, if you disagree even a little bit, that's it. You're a heretic. You're a Nazi. You're with the right wing. You're MAGA. You're a Trump supporter. I mean, one disagreement will get you banished like that.
Yes.
Reeks of cult.
And this is called purity testing in cult speak. And I've started a book on fascism, and the number one word I've already used is purity. Right? It's like this is the pursuit of purity is how you get to the most dangerous thing about cults, my number 10, which is ends justifies the means.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We're seeing this on both sides, especially around Middle East topics, right? Just all or nothing, purity, and it's on both sides. And the lack of ability to see through it, but also the willingness to justify your side because it is your side.
Yeah.
And not even be willing to engage in conversation is like, that has been a huge shift in our country in the last, I would say, 50 years.
And on that one, the Democratic Party at large is even more guilty these days. It used to be the Republican Party would banish anyone who criticized other Republicans. It was Reagan's 11th Amendment, never criticize another Republican, right? Now the Democratic Party, I mean, for a long time now, they're finally breaking this, and it's such a relief. But never criticize Biden, never criticize Pelosi, never criticize another Democrat. Then if you do, you're with the other side. And you should be banished. And no one should talk to you, right?
Yeah.
And it really, when they start saying no one should talk to you, that's when you know it's a cult, in my opinion, right?
Right.
And so then that leads to the last two examples. So I remember when Dick Cheney said, after we invade Iraq, Iran then offers up actually a deal to us that was terrific to get rid of some of their weapons, et cetera, and do what we wanted, because honestly, they got scared, right? And Dick Cheney refused it and said, we don't talk to evil, because talking to the other side humanizes them, et cetera, and he doesn't want them humanized, he wanted to attack them, right?
Right.
So finally,
and even this emphasis on this line between good and evil, right? And I always say, like, the thing about lines in the sand is they're easy to erase. Spent a lot of time on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and like there are no lines there, right? And so it is this, like, when you are unable to engage in a conversation, when you are cutting people off from other sources or topics, but really, I think we have to acknowledge that there's good and evil in all of us, and this has unfortunately kind of been one of the things about the messaging of this country, the United States, right? We're the good guys, really, really loudly. And now we're living through a moment, I think, when many of us starting to realize that, hey, maybe all of these systems are not so great. So which is when cults pop up, by the way. Cults pop up in times of social turmoil. So like, we are redoing a lot of the topics of the 60s and 70s, right? And trying to push them further. And some people are trying to push them the other way. And unsurprisingly, in times of social turmoil, uprise the people who promise you the answers. Right. And this is one of my things for people is like, be so skeptical of anyone giving you an easy answer, right? Like Elon Musk was never going to take us to Mars when the world's best scientists can't build a functioning biodome. Like there are no easy answers in the world right now. They are all complicated topics that are going to have tons of discussion. And we're never going to get through them if we can't have the discussion.
So look, for rational people, obviously everybody's got good and evil in them. And obviously it's not determined by what religion, race, ethnicity you were born into, right? That's just scientific, it's empirical. But, and I've never called them this, but now that you've described all this, want to ask you about the Israeli cult. Because they say never talk to anyone who criticizes Israel. call them anti-Semitic, and drive them from the conversation. And we just did a story on the Young Turks about Jewish parents that are really mad at their kids because they voted for Mamdani. And it was almost like they were saying, we raised them to be racist, and they wouldn't be. And we wanted them to hate Muslims and to vote against Muslims. We wanted them to support Israel above all, and they wouldn't do it. And they're so mad that their cult training didn't work on their kids because they were in the general atmosphere of America, which I take great pride in as an American, by the way, and in that sense. And it literally said, Daniela, I wish we'd sent them to Israel more so that, and as you were talking, I was like, oh, so they can get isolated with only that tribe and get indoctrinated into that tribe's way of thinking and only support that tribe and say, and the one that scares me the most, number 10, we're all in danger, so we must protect this tribe by any means necessary.
Yes. I want to preface by saying I'm very, very careful and hesitant about talking about the Middle East just because I'm a former intelligence officer trained on and deployed to the Middle East. So that being said, right, I do think that there's a lot of cult think goes into this exact thing that you are talking about with parents trying to control the children. And what I would say is interesting, though, is what you were saying. So first of all, there's a lot of end justifies the means mentality in all of this. I agree with you. And it's all very, very scary. There's also anti-Semitism in almost every conspiracy theory historically. And that really comes into cult think too, right? So this gets like, I think, as you have said, just a super complicated question. But what's kind of cool is that indoctrinating children just rarely works in the long term, is what we're finding out. Like now that we've had, we've really only been studying cults since the 70s, right? And so it's been this like process of finding things out. But we are finding out, and especially if you cannot keep your perfect isolation that you mentioned, it is really, really hard to brainwash people, right? That is why you have segments of large groups in New York City that are completely isolated off, right? Because if they're allowed out, they are going to be infected by all the diversity that is there. So that, like, the good news is the brainwashing is not working, right? Like the majority of Mormons are leaving the church, even though they have more money than Heavenly Father. Like, the way that cults die is when they fail to keep and recruit the next generation.
Yeah.
And I do think that's happening. I just think we're right in the middle of it right now. And so it's really scary.
Yeah, and it's not just to pick on the Israelis. Yes, they are clearly doing the most damage these days in like body count and in so many different ways. But lots of communities, including Muslim communities, come to America and they want to keep their kids isolated. And some of them might have points of view of like never marry outside of your nationality or your religion, or maybe they think that being gay is wrong. Right? And they're like, oh no, now we're in America and they don't even think being gay is wrong. Well, yeah, sorry, but we broke your cult. Okay. And yeah. So.
And, this is kind of ironically what happened to the children of God, right? Like he was very racist and ultimately white supremacist. But then he fled around the world and had children of all races because they were doing, international flirty fishing, and then raised us all and told us we were all the same. So, we don't, they kind of broke their own racism. And I love it when that happens. I love it when they get caught in like their own traps, like these cult leaders will die of curable diseases because they can't go to the hospital because they've told their people that, cults always hate doctors. So.
So that does kind of get you to believe in karma a little bit.
Yeah, I have to tell you my coolest line from the book and see what you think. Which is, I say that cults always promise space travel.
Really? Do they?
So here's what happened. When the Space Force was announced, I was just jumping around my house going, oh my gosh, it's so culty, right? Like I have to figure it out. It's so culty. They named themselves the Guardians, as in of the galaxy. Like that's the official term for spacemen and women. And I was like, why is it always space travel, right? Like our cult leader told us we were going to live in a golden city inside the moon. The Mormons were promised a whole planet, except they lost it recently, right? Obviously you have Scientology, and then of course you have Heaven's Gate. And so again, this is the kind of thing that makes me a different kind of scholar, I think, right? Because I just like feel something and I'm like, I know, let me go figure it out. And I think, we call it metaphorical space, right? But I think it's actually crucial to coercive control that whatever you're being promised is beyond the pale, right? It's in another body, it's in another form, it's on another planet, it's in another dimension, right? It's always, you have to keep going further.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it gets pretty close to heaven, which is kind of also in space. And so give me all your labor, your body, your this and your that, everything you have now in this reality. And I promise there'll be a great reality for you at a much later time in space, heaven, or wherever they've promised you, right? So yeah, I'll take my heaven right now.
And I've even found, so one of the most useful things I think I tell people is that cults can also appear in the form of 1-1 cults, which is usually some kind of an abusive relationship, and single family cults. Westboro Baptist Church is the most famous, but there are many. And so as I've started talking about space travel, I have found that in single family cults, it is often the promise of a trip to Disney World. So sometimes it's Space Mountain.
It could even be Space Mountain. Okay, I'm worried because I did promise my kids Space Mountain at one point. So
it's just one tactic. And also, if you deliver said space travel, it's fine. Right?
We did.
But it's the promise with the never being delivered, right? The constant moving of the goalposts, which is of course something we are seeing a lot these days.
About 3 weeks ago, we were actually on Space Mountain. So we delivered, so that I guess it's not.
You're safe. You're safe.
All right, everybody check out Daniela Mestenek-Young. Her new book is called The Culting of America, What Makes a Cult and Why We Love Them. And she's known as, on YouTube, at Knitting Cult Lady. And seems to have lived up to that reputation. All right.
There's no the, because the is culty. Most cults start with the because it is a subconscious clue that I'm the only one. And if you're thinking about Tigger right now, you are right.
Okay, all right. And things I did not know. All right, Daniela, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Cenk.
Okay, take care. All right, now we know how to break cults. So now the revolution is armed with that. All right, guys, I am going to do a quick bonus segment for you guys. I don't want you to go to a whole weekend without hearing a story about me. No, seriously, I'm going to tell you about how I broke my own indoctrination on actually several times throughout my life. So that's for the members. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join, and we'll see you there.